OTB AM.
With Gillette, we don't just play the game, we change it. Gillette, made of what matters.
We're rolling out the big guns for you this Monday here on OTB AM. As ever, it's Jerry Gilroy and Owen Sheehan with you all the way through until 10 o'clock. And if you want to get anything off your sporting chest this morning, feel free to WhatsApp us. 0879 180 180 is the number. You can always use the hashtag OTBAM on Twitter or leave a comment on the YouTube stream. We'll get to all of them, and there are plenty of talking points today. Roy Keane being one of them. But also Aston Villa have been saved. So as I said, we're rolling out the big guns. Ray Houghton and Paul Merson going to join us a little bit later on. We will talk about Manchester United with Daniel Harris. And if you've got any Manchester United related stuff that you want to talk to us about or any ideas, then feel free to contribute them now. We're going to be talking about the pressure rankings, the managers, the special Premier League managers who will be feeling the most pressure come kick-off at the very start of the season. And then Kieran Donaghy is going to talk to us about what it's like to play behind closed doors, essentially, or in front of 50 of your fans and 50 of the supporters from another club a little bit later on too. So plenty to get our teeth stuck into. We're going to start with Brian Kerr. Brian was part of the commentary team for the 2-0 win for Manchester United against Leicester that has eventually safely shepherded Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's team into the top four and so Champions League football next season. And here he is speaking yesterday exclusively on OTB Sports where the game was, talking about how disappointed Leicester are going to be given how sloppy their defending was for the goals.
They would, but they didn't do enough in the match. I mean, I know that the two goals came fairly late on, but they didn't have too many clear-cut opportunities in the game. Mes Morgan had a great chance to equalise off the cross when it was 1-0. But in fairness to United, they kept Vardy under control, and they didn't give Leicester many opportunities. Indeed, he had one half chance in the first half with a shot from outside the box where he received it in open play. But other than that, United fairly controlled the game without being brilliant themselves. They did enough today, United.
No, you wouldn't say either side got into a great rhythm or had a great spell of play.
No, but Manchester United looked like the team who had the heavy ammunition that they could score a goal if they needed one. Now, I know in the second half, there was a lot of cancelling out. Leicester were doing a bit better. United looked content to wait on an opportunity to come rather than make one. And then that came for him. Little challenge from Greenwood when Chowdhury tried to be too clever, just outside his own penalty area. Greenwood stole the ball, did enough to poke it into Fernandes, who was a fairly quick, sharp pass, and Martial was away, and Morgan was forced to react. Evans coming in the other side. I felt it was a penalty, and Fernandes did the stuff, and there was no real way back from Leicester then. It was too much to a mountain to climb at that stage.
Yeah. Are we a fan of the Fernandes penalty kick routine?
Well, I've seen them doing it now, I think, in probably 4 or 5 games. It seems to be legitimate under the rules. It's a little bit of a skip. Jorginho does something similar when he takes them for Chelsea, and there's been I think there was some law. There was something introduced in relation to the law that you couldn't do a skip on the way up, but referees seem to be ignoring it now. They say, and that's a very late one. He does the skip just as he gets the ball, so the player is fooled by that movement. The goalkeeper. It means that he's actually put off by it. I think in this case, Schmeichel tried to anticipate. I saw Wilfred Ndidi pointing to the goalkeeper's left, and that's where Schmeichel went. And he went early, and it was easy for Fernandes to knock it in. But he's a cool, calm customer. He's made a massive difference. And, Manchester United in those last 9 league games since we got restarted, they've won 6 and drawn 3. So that was real good form. Whereas on the other hand, Leicester were the one who slipped up. They got 9 points from the last 9 games, which proved not to be good enough. And if you look at the end of the table overall, Joe, of the traditional top 6, or may say the most powerful and richest top 6, only Arsenal finished outside it, even though early on before the break, it looked like Sheffield United, Wolves were having a great season, Sheffield United were having a great season, and Leicester were having a great season. Ultimately, at the end, Spurs got back up there, and Chelsea, Manchester United, Manchester City and Liverpool were there. Only Leicester edged out Arsenal. Wolves were edged out with the top 6 again. But they could make the Europa League spot. I'm not sure where that lies. Are they depend on Arsenal winning the cup, or
Yes.
they depend on winning? Yeah, or they could win the Europa League themselves, or Manchester United could win the Europa League. So they've had a very good season, but it just shows you that it's difficult to break that grip that the richest six clubs have, and then at the bottom, it's kind of shown by the fact that Aston Villa escaped with just 35 points. We used to talk about 40 points being what you needed to survive. And then it went down to 37 over the last number of years. This year it's gone down to 35 because the gap at the top, Liverpool 99 points this year. Last year it was 99, 98. Wasn't it, with Manchester City and Liverpool, 98, 97, 100 points the year before that. So those couple of teams at the top are far ahead of the rest and far more consistent. And the teams at the bottom are kind of worse. That's what the table shows now, that, it's hard to make the move into the top 6. But it's also the top 2 have got away in the last few seasons from everybody else. So we go on next year and speculate again. Can somebody break into that top 6? Can Wolves do it? Sheffield United, an extraordinary season, given they just came up this year, but just edged out from a European spot, it seems.
And Leicester, with the 8th highest wage bill in the league, have had a very good season as well, even though it's tapered off so badly, even since December, I suppose. On Manchester United and Solskjaer, then, we began the show by saying if he could get Champions League football, it would give him an authority maybe and a platform to really kick on as Manchester United manager now, his feet under the table and a bit more authority to dictate transfer fees potentially. If Manchester United have aspirations to break some way into that top 2 as it stands, whatever about getting to number 1, but even challenging them more, what do they need and how many players do they need and where do they need them?
Well, look, the standard one is we only need 2 or 3 players. And many managers say that at every level, in every league, 2 or 3 top-class players, and we'd be up there.
Listen, a few ringers back in the day and you could have won everything.
But Manchester United, it has been a fairly dramatic improvement since Fernandes came. Now, just supposing anything happened to him early next season, would they go back? Or would they go forward with what they have? He has been the catalyst for a great improvement around the rest of them. Suddenly, Matic has looked quite a competent holding midfield player, where I said earlier this season, before Christmas, I said I thought his legs were gone. He wasn't getting around quick enough. Not quick enough for the standard of Manchester United if they want to compete with Manchester City and Liverpool. But the top part of the pitch certainly does look very good at the moment. They're relying on young players, Martial, Rashford and Greenwood, and the pace of them. Davies got inched out of it. Lingard, I'd say, wouldn't have a great future at Manchester United based on recent times. The obvious bit is to say, well, the goalkeeper hasn't been reliable this season. What they conceded, 36 goals. But they conceded some goals in important matches and against the teams they needed to be beaten. They did very well against the top teams, that has to be said. They had a good record against the other teams around about them. And so the rest of the teams they weren't consistent against. But I think obviously they need another centre-back. They need a goalkeeper. And they need another midfield player. But they seem to have the resources, Manchester United, that they can go and get them. There's not many players about that are better than that they have. The talk of getting Sancho would give them another very good attacking player. There aren't so many centre-backs around that would definitely be better than Maguire and Lindelof. I mean, a lot of teams are looking for that extra centre-back. Liverpool, got their man, and he made a huge difference. Maguire's a bit of criticism. Maguire that he's not been brilliant. He's not been as good as Van Dijk. But he's done all right. He's done all right, and the pairing has been reasonable. The full backs are improving. Williams is improving. Shaw is improving when he's playing, and the right back. So, can they get 1 or 2 or 3? I think Manchester United can. And certainly the front part of it is very, very exciting.
The name that they're being linked with, as our Man City, is Koulibaly. And there's a race on for him, and he'll cost big money. But he's probably worth it, isn't he?
Yeah, well, Koulibaly has been a name been mentioned by English clubs for years, but nobody's been able to extract him from Napoli. Maybe this year. Maybe this will be the year that he go. He's obviously on huge wages at Napoli that they've been able to keep him for so long. You don't know until he goes into Manchester United situation how good he's going to be. But he's always looked a very, very competent centre back, very, very strong, powerful, reads the game well, comfortable on the ball, all those things. But again, it's a fine judgment, and you would hope that the recruitment and the people who are making those decisions can make a wise decision on whether it's Koulibaly or somebody else. I mean, there's been talk about Diaz of Benfica as well. They've gone there before, haven't they? In getting Lindelof. I think in Portugal, you're better going for the attacking players than going for defensive players. A lot of the defensive players haven't proved to be the real deal that are taken out of the Portuguese league. But I think there's 1 or 2 others around that they obviously are assessing. I'm sure they have a long list, but what we see in the media is only speculation.
I was running in and out here. I was in the main listening to yourself and Steo, but I was running outside to get something. And I overheard Gary Neville and Martin Tyler on Sky, and Neville was saying he thinks United need 5-6 players. And in particular, you mentioned Lingard. I think he was talking about that next cohort after their 11, that the starting 11 now has reached a point where it's pretty good. But who are the 4, 5, 6 names that tend to come in as the supporting cast? And at the moment it's the Lingard standard, say, whereas really what they want to be pitching at, I would presume, is a Grealish or a Sancho standard who'll come in and play 30, 40 games. That's where they need to get to next.
Yeah. And I mean, Lingard played a lot of games this year and didn't score any goals. I've been waiting on something to happen for him in last year too. Igalo is hardly the answer at this stage of his career. They have a lot of good young players who I saw playing in the Europa League, and I didn't think that they were going to make the difference either. Right. The like of Galbraith and Garner, Pereira he's played a bit this year. Fred, I think, good solid player in midfield. I think Fred is probably a little bit unlucky. He was certainly improving, and he kind of got inched out himself, and McTominay have got inched out by the return of Pogba. Like, is Pogba going to stay now? Is he settled that he's happy now? He's got someone to play with. That he's not. He likes Fernandes. He seems to be going, and we're not hearing anything more from the agent that he might be gone.
No,
so
but
maybe,
I'm not sure the market has the millions that they're after at the moment either.
No, and the wages that he might look for, when the talk of going back to Juventus seem to be able to pick up players from the Premier League without having to pay fees for them. They're able to pick up fellas like Moses and Young and not pay fees for them. And Ericsson and in general, Inter and Juventus seem to be able to poach players. The Italian league seems to be able to get players on the cheap from the Premier League. So they're hardly going to spend hundreds of millions to get Pogba. So it looks like he might be there. But, if Gary Neville says United need 4 or 5 top players, I will bow to Gary's knowledge about Manchester United. But I often think that he's ultra critical of them because they're not meeting the levels they were at when he was playing.
At the other end today, Aston Villa survived. They will be desperate to hold on to Jack Grealish. He was, I would say, relatively non-committal after the Arsenal game when he was asked if that was his last game or not for Aston Villa at home. So we'll have to see what happens with Grealish. Watford go down, and you suspect the owners will have changed manager a few times by this time next year. Norwich are down. Bournemouth are an interesting case. Real fairy tale story. 5 years in the Premier League now. There was a 6-year journey up from League Two. You would hope that they would give Eddie Howe a chance to turn this thing around.
Well, just a few quick ones on that. I think Grealish was non-committal, but was committal that he was going. His non-committal meant I'm not committed to this club, and I'll go if there's a, and now I think he'd be in a position mentally to be able to say, and I helped to save them, and I was loyal this year. And it was a remarkable turnaround. I mean, they got 4 results in the last 4 games, picked up 8 points, and by my calculations, they'd only got 2 points from the previous 10 games. So to get 8 from the last 4 was fair going. So they've done well to make it, but it's been more through the inadequacies of the others than any brilliance by themselves, other than those last 4 games. Watford, shot themselves in the foot. I mean, just before they lost the match to West Ham 3-1, where they were well beaten, they'd won 2 games in a row, so they got 6 points. So it was obviously, I would say, it was personal between, Gino Pozzo and the manager. I think there was obviously a row there after the game, and that the manager wasn't backing off, and your man, as they do, and is their form. I mean, people have said they don't know anything about football, but they do know about football. They've been running 3 clubs, and it's worked for them in the way they've run them, the way they've run this club. I mean, I have put them in my team for my predictions for relegation every year for the last 4 years because the way they've run it. But only Garcia seemed to turn them a bit, and they extended his contract, and he did very well. But then once he ran into a run of matches, he got done, and he was out. And this year they've had 3 managers, and it's not worked for them in the end. They shot themselves in the foot. Bournemouth, Eddie Howe, earlier in the season, I think they were up as high as 6th or 7th at one stage in December. And Eddie Howe was still, that young, inventive, nice manager who had done extraordinary things, who could possibly be English manager in the future. Unfortunately, his team fell apart since December. Had an extraordinary run of awful results, never got going. I think they were fairly stale when you look at the personnel who were playing. You kind of looked at the team, and it looked like a lot of fellas who had been there a long time and had just gone past their sell-by day and weren't good enough. And the recruitment hasn't worked out well for them. They've invested in some players at a time, just saying Billing, Huddersfield went down with Huddersfield last year. Now he's going down with Bournemouth again this year. I didn't see him as a good enough player for the Premier League. Lerma, a bit hit and miss. Brooks, player with potential, but not done enough. Wilson and King score goals for a while. Then the goals dried up. Solanke was a disaster, didn't score any goals until they were almost down. So, the recruitment didn't prove to be very good. But overall, club, what were the home gates? About 12,000, stadium holds 12,000. It's hard to sustain that in the Premier League and stay there. I know they've backers and Chinese backers and all that, and there's money in the club. But it's unfortunate they went down. Will they stick with Eddie Howe? I would say they should do. If they didn't, would he be in demand? Do you think he would pitch in at Premier League level again? Yes, it'd be my reaction. I think clubs would take him. I think he's a very good reputation. Haven't had one bad season. I know he went to Burnley for a while and it didn't go well for him, and then he went back to Bournemouth. That's a good few years ago. But the gradual improvement in Burnley and the style of football he played, he wouldn't be one that people would be put off and say, I don't like the way his team played. But Bournemouth was built on, solid defensive, low block and all that stuff and breakaway goals. They were built on trying to dominate teams, dominate games and play well, play stylish football. So I think he would still get a very good job at Bournemouth to dispense with him. So it brings to a close probably as strange a season as I hope we'll ever see in our lifetimes, because it has been incredibly strange, and they did well in many ways to finish, because I would have said in April, May there was no chance of this thing happening, but they have done well to finish out the season. We'll remember it for 2 reasons, I suspect, Brian. One,
the COVID lockdown, and 2, Liverpool's brilliance will endure. This brilliant Liverpool team, the memory of them will endure.
Yes, indeed. It's the strangest season in my lifetime. I think it's the first time a season has been stopped since 1939-40, maybe. It's the first time a season has ever been interrupted. They did brilliantly to get it going again, but the resources they had to do it made that a lot easier than a lot of smaller leagues would have found it very difficult. We've seen ourselves our own league here. We've had to wait a lot longer until things settle down a bit with the COVID. But the brilliance of Liverpool, pre-COVID, particularly so, and then they had enough. Then they got a good enough league with 23-point lead at that stage. And once they got over the line after they beat Crystal Palace 4-0, and that another brilliant performance by them, and then Chelsea did them a favour, beat Manchester City. It would have been sad had the season not been finished and there had been any asterisk after Liverpool's title win, given the magnificence of their play in the earlier part of the season. It was sensational stuff. The surprise was that Manchester City weren't able to run them a bit closer or give them a match. I didn't see that happening. I thought we'd have a closely run title. I thought Liverpool might win it this year, that they would just about have a hunger that Manchester City wouldn't have. But the gap between them really was extraordinary. And the fact that City lost against a lot of teams like
9
Wolves.
games. City lost 9.
Well, they lost twice to Wolves, didn't they? They lost to Norwich, games like that. Whatever about losing to Liverpool, they lost games to teams you wouldn't have expected them to lose to. But they were exceptional winners, Liverpool, as Manchester City have been in the last couple of seasons too.
Well, here's hoping it's a good season next season. Brian, we'll let you go for the time being. Thanks a mil.
OTB AM.
On OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station. OTB Gold.
The very best of Off the Ball.
Are you crazy?
This is OTB Sports Radio.
This week on OTB Gold.
The art of beating people is obviously you've got to have the trick, we know that, and it's got to work.
Absolutely brilliant manoeuvre by Mansell, fantastically brilliant.
But I never even wanted to see those people, you know. I went into isolation for many years.
Schmidt was there the last time. They could learn to calm it down a little bit, and everyone else could as well.
Jack McCaffrey, you're very welcome. You just warned me, no boring questions.
Yeah, it's been a long day.
OTB Gold, the very best of Off the Ball. Weekdays from 1 p.m. and 6 p.m.
This is OTB Sports Radio, live 24/7 on the OTB Sports app.
Missing this?
Salah takes the shot. Oh, Mo Salah with one of the goals of the season. Unbelievable.
Then get this, the all-new OTB Sports app. Off the Ball, Ireland's premier sports channel, now has a new home, featuring the biggest names in Irish and world sports. Podcasts, interviews, news, commentary, analysis, plus almost 20 years of sporting archives. All free and ready when you are, at home or on the go. The new OTB Sports app. Download it now from the App Store and Google Play.
OTB
AM.
With Gillette, we don't just play the game, we change it. Gillette, made of what matters.
It's just coming up to 7:54 this morning. You're welcome along to OTB AM. It's Jerry Gilroy and Owen Sheehan with you all the way through until 10 this morning. And all the stars are coming out to play today, Owen. We've got Paul Merson, we've got Ray Houghton, we've got Kieran Donaghy, which is about what we should have after a weekend like that.
A great front three in any sport, really. Two great attacking players off Kieran Donaghy as the fulcrum of your attack, I dare say.
I would happily, if that was Villa's front three next season, I think we could go quite far.
Congratulations.
Thanks very much.
How does the Gilroy household celebrate last night? Is it Sweet Caroline all night long?
Me and the lads, we laboured hard all season, to get us to this point where we could look forward with some hope to next season. I had completely forgotten that Sheffield United scored against Villa on the opening day of Project Restart, and VAR didn't give it, or goal line technology didn't give it. They would have lost that game. They would have gone down, and it's like, what a complete fluke. I don't know. So I stopped watching the Villa game and flicked over when you helpfully went into the WhatsApp group and went, "Oh, what if we're going to do this?" and started watching that. Like, Did you watch that? I don't know if you saw it, right? So Danny Welbeck,
I did, yeah.
there's like the cross that Danny Welbeck is like, oh, I'm going to side foot this. It's going to be the most beautiful goal that everybody remembers. And then instead of just like stopping the ball and kicking it straight into the net, it's a little bit fancy. And then Deeney misses a header. A couple of the defenders miss headers. Like they walloped Arsenal in that final 15 minutes. Villa fluked at the very last minute. They fluked their way into next season's Premier League. It was not much fun.
No, I think it was probably kind of speaking as an Arsenal supporter who has been there and done that when it comes to crumbling when a team tends to score a goal against them. I thought for sure that it was set up for Watford to go and actually get the job done yesterday, and that Welbeck back here, for anybody who didn't see it, like it's an incredible save from Martinez in the Arsenal goal, and I think that's pivotal to Villa staying up as well, because at that point it's like, 3-3. Is there the motivation there for them to hold on for a draw? There's not at all. Watford probably go out and get a winner. So all these things kind of helpfully came together for Aston Villa. But to be honest with you, everybody's really happy that it is. If this happens in favour of, I don't know, Watford, people will be sitting there saying, they poxed out, and they would not be getting the happiness from the neutrals for the ghost goal against Sheffield United, for example. People, I think, are genuinely delighted to see Villa in the league. The problem now is that the league is going to be much stronger next year, because you've got West Brom and Leeds United coming up, who are definitely better than at least two of the teams that have got relegated from this year's Premier League. So immediately, I'd imagine, Joe, you're looking ahead to next season, probably without Jack Grealish, and thinking to yourself, this is going to be difficult. This is going to be as difficult, if not more so, to stay in the Premier League next year. It's hard to know what foundation from this season they're actually building on, because the team changed so much over the course of the early part, and then the second part there was loads of chopping and changing going on, and it kind of seems like maybe that's the level that the manager's at. Like, they invested loads of money, so you wouldn't be terribly surprised to see them invest another ton of cash and try and find a replacement for Grealish. But yeah, look, I think the 24 hours, 48 hours of happiness and joy and getting away with one that's the whole point of being a football fan. It makes you feel alive. The only other thing I would say is that everybody's happy that Villa are in the Premier League because they believe that that's a mandatory 6 points for them next season. And in a lot of cases, that was kind of true. This is one of the lowest points totals that has managed to scrape through and survive in the Premier League for a long time. So we'll see. I want to talk about Sky's coverage and the unheralded star, the I would say straight man, but he's not a straight man to Roy Keane's act, is Micah Richards. Micah Richards has, like, early on it looked like Keane was kind of like, oh, what have you won? And Richards kind of decided, okay, I know how to play this now. I'm actually just going to laugh. So I don't know if you saw this on his Instagram stories yesterday. There's a voice off, and it's Roy Keane talking. Like, they're just obviously having a conversation. They've just arrived. It's pre-match, essentially. They're not dressed or whatever. It's like, it's private. Essentially what's happening here is a private conversation between two men who are at work together, and I think we can have a look at this.
Did you drive down yourself? Yeah. Indeed. Right. This is a new day, mate. This is social media. This is what the people want to see. They want to see the behind the scenes, what goes on. He's got your little suit there, right? What about, you got your makeup on already? Not yet.
So for anybody who can't actually see that, anybody who's listening to this, a camera goes around the corner and Roy Keane doesn't realise that it's there first. And he's like, did you drive down yourself? So they're just chatting. But Micah Richards can't contain himself, because Roy's got, like, his natty red glasses on and he's sitting there all relaxed having a cup of tea. Just unguarded. And Richards is loving it, absolutely loving the fact that he's got some gold, and I don't know how many views have happened on that. But after the match, right, the scenes, this is exactly what you expect to happen. There are mad, wild celebrations at Villa, orchestrated to the point where, the Neil Diamond classic is there, and there's a little bit of hush and there's a little bit of pause, and Dave Jones is in studio. This is amazing, isn't it? But the best producer on the scene is Micah Richards, who has already noticed that Roy Keane is not happy and can't contain his laughter. Because Dave's like, you wouldn't be good from this, would you? And it's like, clearly Richards' laughter. Listen how early the laughter starts. We can play this, I think, can we?
Why? Not going to ever win anything.
They just stayed in the Premier League.
No, listen, delighted. Listen, Dean Smith, he's made a good point. We've said it before. There was a big change at the club last summer. It was going to take time. They've stayed up. A big achievement. Celebrations, listen, slightly over the top. Good luck to him.
I don't think Dave Jones was going to ask Roy Keane about this until he realised that Mickey Richards knows exactly what's going on here. Keane's got his face on. I'm not in any way. I think Roy Keane's just playing a role here, and he's doing it very well.
Without question. It's very helpful as well that Mickey Richards pulled the mask back a little bit just to see that, Roy Keane does engage in small talk before kicking off. Like, what a boring line to be saying. Can you drive here yourself, sort of thing. He is just like any other pundit, any other vanilla pundit out there who likes to make small talk with their colleagues before actually going on air. So I applaud Mickey Richards for what he's done. You're right, he's a fantastic foil for Roy Keane, and that's kind of what you need to get the best out of him. The people who try to go toe-to-toe with Keane and try and take him on at the act of, criticism, it can often be a very tough act because nobody does it as well as Roy Keane at the moment. It is quite OTT a lot of the time, but really, maybe Souness could go toe-to-toe with Roy Keane in a proper barrage of criticism, but not many other people could.
Well, even the delivery of what are they celebrating for? And then it's like, well, actually, okay, so Dean Smith probably deserves a little bit of celebration, and some of those players do, but the celebrations are just a bit too much. I'd love to have seen the footage from when Sunderland stayed up to see if he was in the middle of it or if he just drove home that night ripping because they were in a relegation fight. I don't know. I can't actually. I was trying to have a look around to see if I could find any of it, but I couldn't see exactly what it was. And, perhaps this is all part of him playing that role. But certainly people on Twitter were like, oh, this is very enjoyable, but also this is terrible. Who does he think he is? While actually really enjoying the fact that he is who he is. So, this is only sport after all. Isn't that the whole point? Aren't we supposed to enjoy all of these aspects of it?
I guess going back to look, was Roy Keane celebrating when Sunderland stayed up? Is that akin to going back to see if Frank Lampard was given it the big one when Derby County got to the playoffs last year as well? I mean, there's been a lot of people going back to look to see how public utterances have compared to previous behaviour over the last little while. My question for you is, where does this Sweet Caroline rank in terms of the Great Sweet Caroline courses we've had this year? Like, is it above the Temple Bar instance? Is it above the Welsh pub instance?
What was the Welsh one?
It was the same thing as Temple Bar.
Oh, right, so COVID.
It was also the start of COVID, yeah.
Right, okay. Wasn't Sweet Caroline one of the things that they did at the Rugby World Cup?
Yes, indeed,
it's
but
like
that was 2019.
The whole tournament, the whole stadium will be swinging Sweet Caroline.
Yeah, it's true. But like, I'm kind of like trying to compress this all into kind of 2020 Sweet Carolines here. That was so very last year, the Rugby World Cup. I think it's
Did we ever find out if anybody actually ended up getting COVID from that Temple Bar Sweet Caroline, or maybe there was like a little bit of mass hysteria about that video?
No, the app wasn't out yet, so we don't know.
So essentially, nobody did. That's
the technical answer.
Right, okay. I'm all in favour of Roy Keane being bah humbug, by the way. It's 100% in character. It's exactly what you want in that circumstance. And I see massive debates happening on Twitter about, well, he's right. And Oisin Langan, our erstwhile colleague, is fully on board. Come on. Now, look, I mean, I think that the players deserved to celebrate. I hope they don't celebrate too long, and I hope they come back next year and they play a bit better and that they guarantee safety by Christmas. Which really, with the wage bill that they have and the amount of money that they're going to be spending, they should be able to do that. But I have low hopes. Dean Smith's going to feature in our power rankings, in our pressure rankings a little bit later on with Gillette. So we'll talk about that a little bit later on too. A reminder, OTB AM is live in association with Gillette. Good morning, start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. What are we at? 4 minutes past 8 here. So other winners and losers from the Premier League yesterday. The whole Watford scenario, is Nigel Pearson a big winner at the moment?
I guess so. Like as much as you can possibly win at that game, it just still makes absolutely zero sense whatsoever. The lightning rod that Watford managed to create for themselves here, which was so utterly unnecessary. The same thing would have happened, more than likely, had Nigel Pearson been manager, and people would have been like, did Watford get that decision right to actually appoint Nigel Pearson? You know, at least Watford stuck with the manager sort of thing. And if they sacked Nigel Pearson in the off-season, nobody would have noticed. It would have been like a tree falling in the middle of a forest. Nobody would have paid any attention whatsoever. But because of the way they did it, everybody's like, Watford are the big bad wolf, and they're gobbling up everything that's good to do with Premier League football at the moment. And down they go without Nigel Pearson. And the fact is, the chopping and changing that has happened at management level suggests that they obviously have owners that are quite demanding. They have owners that can spend a bit of money, and they could bounce back up within a couple of seasons. You'd have to worry a good bit about Bournemouth, on the other hand, who perhaps don't have the structure in place to get back up. Norwich, though, while they were one of the ones to go down first and clearly the worst team in the Premier League this season, they didn't spend big, and they might not have the financial kind of millstone around the neck that bestows a few other teams that go down. So in terms of bouncing back, I'd probably put Watford up there first, Norwich second, and then Bournemouth could be in a bit of trouble.
Adam Ida obviously is more likely to get football regularly in the Championship than he was in the Premier League. So that's probably not the worst thing that's actually happened to his career, and who knows, maybe some of the other strikers at the club will end up leaving. So perhaps that's not bad for him. Just one final quick thought on Pearson, though, that like, how toxic do you need to be or perceive to be where you're going down but you can't even keep your job for the last 2 games of the season? That kind of that would ring alarm bells. Even at Watford, that would ring alarm bells for me if I was the chairman or chief executive of another football club, wondering, that guy, they got rid of him with 2 games left to go. What happened there? It's an interesting decision that they've made.
There's definitely eyebrows raised everywhere about what actually is the real story here. There's no way the story doesn't come out, though, because it's just been, as I say, a lightning rod for criticism for Watford. What is the hurry here? Why didn't they just get out and, why didn't some publication get the leaked transcripts of what was said or what exactly happened, or leaked CCTV? I know there have been reports, but it would have not been Watford's interest if something did happen to actually tell the press immediately and let them know exactly what happened, but we haven't seen that.
If you're Amazon Prime, are you making a Watford documentary next season? I am.
Yes. Watford, no matter what season it is, with the current ownership that they have, it seems like a pretty fun place to be. Obviously the Tottenham one could be pretty interesting as well. But I mean, they got their happy ending yesterday, didn't they, with their Europa League spot secured? It's how you want every documentary to end, really. They can go and they can play Genk next season. What a beautiful end to a beautiful documentary.
8:08 this morning here on OTB AM. Let me tell you about what's coming up. A little bit later on, we're going to be getting back into the Villa side of things with Ray Houghton and Paul Merson. Kieran Donaghy is going to join us after 9 o'clock this morning to talk to us about what it's like to play Gaelic football behind closed doors at the moment, to do quite well. And we are also going to bring you our Gillette Pressure Rankings. That's coming your way just before 9 o'clock this morning. And we're going to get to Daniel Harris talking about Manchester United in just a couple of minutes' time. Liverpool's victory, because it's been all we've been talking about since, was it October, essentially, kind of has come off the main story for the last week or two. Is that just how these things work, Owen?
I know.
Actually, when this season is remembered, it will be remembered for that.
About that question, I think in fairness, it's kind of been off the hob and on the hob over the last little while. But the break obviously took it off. When they won the league, it was firmly on. And also last Thursday when they lifted the trophy, I would have thought it was like the only story in town last Friday. So in terms of a victory lap, it's actually been the longest victory lap of all time. It's not going to be the best Premier League points tally of all time. We knew that from quite some time back at this point. But they still managed to get to 99 points yesterday as well. A quick shout out actually to Phil Egan, who managed to correctly predict exactly what was going to happen with his Monday headlines today on Friday. He said, for fuck's sake, that Leicester wouldn't qualify, and he mentioned Liverpool's 99 red points, or balloons or something. I can't remember. I'm not the sub-editor in his headlines. But those two things did end up coming through, and Liverpool with their 99 points, you immediately, if you put it on points tally, have to say that they're right up there as one of the greats in a single season Premier League outing. But there's probably a bit more nuance to it than that. The question now will be about retention of the Premier League. City, the only team to do it in the last decade. Of course, United, the only team to ever do 3 in a row, which they only managed to do once it's very quick how the goalposts shift when you think that the team is unassailable, and you look at the next season and everybody just seems to make up so much ground. I think that'll be the case next year with Liverpool. If they manage to win the Premier League in similar fashion next year, regardless of their points tally, it will be truly astonishing, especially when it comes to back-to-back teams.
What do they need to do to be able to do that? Do they need to hope that Man City lose 8 games again?
Yes. I think that's the only way, right? So, like,
well, they can get 99 points again.
City might get 100. Like, the City have got 100 in recent times. They have dropped off, but they haven't dropped off considerably. The question is, how highly do you rate the likes of Vincent Kompany and David Silva, and how important have they been not only to what they do on the pitch, but how important have they been to the dressing room? Like, the theories have been out there that Vincent Kompany's departure has been a key component to City's fading away at times this season, and again, a lot of that is to do with the leadership qualities that he would have brought. So maybe those sort of figures around the dressing room are irreplaceable, and maybe it's those. For that reason, we should perhaps be giving the correct level of credit to Jordan Henderson. And I know he picked up his Football Writers Association awards before the start of the weekend, and I guess it was kind of based on narrative and the icon that Jordan Henderson was, rather than basing it solely on the footballer. But really, when all is said and done, and perhaps if Jordan Henderson's Liverpool career ends in the next few seasons, I wonder will we look back and say, God, that glue that held that dressing room together to get something astonishing like 99 points was so unbelievably important and had a sort of Vincent Kompany-esque effect.
Virgil played every minute. He's the 5th player in Premier League history to play every minute, every 5th outfield player to play every minute of a Premier League winning season, and that might have been enough. Maybe if he hadn't won last year, they could have given him 2 in a row. Maybe he's actually more important than Henderson. But anyway, we can come back to that a little bit later on. Nathan Murphy's counting his money, no doubt. Daniel Harris, good morning to you. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Yeah, good. The dust is settling slowly. What is your assessment of where Manchester United are right now?
They're in a pretty good place. They've got a lot of work to do still, so they shouldn't be clapping each other on the back particularly. But considering where they were after they lost to Burnley and where they are now, that is a lot of improvement. And ultimately what you've seen that Solskjaer, for whatever his faults may be and however much people doubted him, he came into a club that was absolutely on its arse, and he's turned it around. And they are now a club that looks like it's going somewhere. If you were a player who United wanted to sign, you might look at it and think, I'd like to be part of that. And the question now is how much money the board give him, and whether he's identified the correct areas in which to spend it, and whether he picks the right players.
So much has come down to the signing of one individual that has transformed how everything, how the club is perceived. Now it looks like their scouting system really works, and it looks like they were building a platform. And it's not a fluke, because obviously this was a player that they identified, but it's wild the impact that one individual has had.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's kind of a strange one, really, because on the one hand, their scouts did identify him. On the other hand, they didn't buy him in the summer. And maybe the scouts did say, you must sign this man immediately, and no one did. But it doesn't massively smack of that. But yeah, it is true that Bruno's made a huge difference in that first you've got his ability on the pitch, which is immense. He sees the game in a way that other people don't, and he knows where to be, such that even when he's not playing particularly well, games tend not to pass him by, and that he will always contribute some kind of important moment or two. And that's what we saw yesterday. He played out his arse yesterday, but he was still involved in the goal that United scored. So United scored, and the penalty that he took also is significant, because I think that Rashford took a penalty United got against Bournemouth, and he stuck it in the corner, but the goalkeeper nearly saved it and wasn't far off saving it. Whereas with Bruno, I think he's 6-0 from penalties won, and the keepers are getting absolutely nowhere near them. And when you get 17 penalties a game like United do, having someone that you know will score them is important. But I think it is also important to say that United have been good in periods this season before Bruno turned up. They were good at the beginning, and then Pogba got injured, and then Martial got injured, and they were fighting it from then. So although he has turned up, and I talked about his ability before, but his mentality is also important, that he's not hoping things are going to happen. He intends for things to happen, and he intends to make them happen, and he doesn't let his teammates off. And I think that kind of leadership, both by example and by cajoling, is also really important in a side that for most of the last few seasons has lacked a bit of on-pitch leadership. And in England and in British football, I think we tend to think of on-pitch leadership as people that scream and shout. But in any sport, and even in cricket and American football, where the captain actually has a lot of big decisions to make, the most important aspect of leadership is leading from the front. You've got to do your own job. And if you have a lot of players that are playing well, even if they're not the kind of people that are screaming and shouting, that still constitutes leadership. And that is the most important element of leadership. And Bruno Fernandes certainly has that. But United were looking good when they had all their players available, even before they signed him. But him signing unlocked lots more potential that was in that team. And yet it is unusual where you buy a player and they turn up and immediately they revolutionise everything that you thought your team was capable of doing. But he has managed that.
John Giles calls that moral courage, and you can see it when it's like it's difficult to get on the ball, but he still gets on it anyway, and he controls it, and he's happy to be taking that risk and to be taking that responsibility on, and that has had a kind of a knock-on impact. One other thing in all this I think that is really important is that the previous couple of managers were not going to be there for a long time. They weren't there trying to build a 10-year career there. Van Gaal was there for a short fixed period and kind of knew that Mourinho more than likely was coming at some point. With Solskjaer, he is trying to put long-term strategies in place. So I guess the impact of this is that if somebody comes in and says, oh, my client wants to be the best paid player in the world, Solskjaer's going to say no. Whereas the previous managers were like, well, I don't really care because I'm not going to be here to see the end of that contract. I just want to keep this player happy. I can't see them, for example, giving Alexis the contract that they gave under the previous regimes. I can't see them giving De Gea that contract under Solskjaer. I might be wrong about this, and maybe they're about to give Pogba the biggest contract and it'll be a giant albatross around their neck if he doesn't play up to it. But it just feels like you now have somebody who is trying to take ownership of decisions that are going to have a long-term impact.
I think that what you've got is Andy Mitten did a brilliant interview with Solskjaer for United We Stand, and the greatest line, the best line he in that interview was, I'd rather have a hole than an arsehole. And one of the things that unites all the people he signed in one way or another is mentality. And he's not just signing people who he thinks are good at football, he's signing people that he thinks are the right kind of person to have around. And I'm sure that's why he pushed the boat out for Harry Maguire. I would be amazed if he thinks that Harry Maguire is as good a defender as the best defenders that he played with, because he isn't. But what Harry Maguire brings, in Solskjaer's opinion, is some presence, some leadership, some calmness, some authority, some dedication. And those were things that were missing in the team, and those were the things that he wanted in the team. And although it took him a while to make Harry Maguire captain, I would be pretty sure that when he bought Harry Maguire, he knew that Harry Maguire was going to be his captain at whatever time it became possible for him to make him the captain politically without pissing off too many people. And I think what you say is right. The other thing about Ole is that although people take the piss at him for being a Fergie tribute act and for playing all the old United tunes and for his whole obsession with United's relentless self-mythologizing, when you're trying to create a culture, that kind of thing actually matters. And what you're seeing with Ole is that because he believes in all that stuff about the club that is very easy to laugh at, it means that he believes in the club. So the decisions that he makes, in his opinion, are for the good of the club. And Van Gaal and Mourinho was more the case, and this isn't particularly a criticism because they're workers and they've got bosses. So the decisions they made were more for the benefit of themselves. Whereas Ole is making decisions that even if the decisions that he puts in place don't benefit him because he's lost his job by then, they're decisions that will benefit the club. And he has changed the way that people around the club feel. If you remember what United were like towards, not just in the dog days of Mourinho, but for quite some time before that, when he was trying to get himself fired and going through his repertoire of tricks to force that to happen, no one looked like they were enjoying themselves when they were playing for United. And you're playing for Man United. Like those should be the times of your life. And I think Ole has changed that for the players, and he's bringing through young players. If you're good enough, you will get to play. And with Mourinho, that wasn't so much the case. One of the games that always sticks in my mind is they played Brighton away at the end of the season, and they played out their asses. They lost. And in his interview afterwards, Mourinho couldn't hide his delight at how rubbish Rashford and Martial had been. And he was saying, you told me I had to play these two guys, I had to play them together. And look, I was right. And what Ole's doing is he's forcing performances out of some less good players, but increasingly he's getting brilliant performances out of his best young talents. And those were the kind of things that didn't really happen under Mourinho. Mourinho tried to get Martial out of the club to sign Ivan Perisic. And what Ole did, and I admit myself, I would have thought Mourinho, I'd had enough of Martial last summer. I'd had enough of the lack of effort. I'd had enough of him standing about, waiting for someone to pass him the ball while he was standing still, for him not chasing into the box from the left wing. And what Ole has done is he has turned that guy around. And I don't want to say that everything that we see with Anthony Martial now is because of Ole, because I want to discount the work that the players put in. He must have put in a lot of work. But what he's done is to stop him from indulging his worst habits, he's stuck him in the middle of the pitch. And it looks a lot like he's taught him how to play centre forward now. And he has mentioned it himself, like we've done a lot of work with him, in a way that I don't feel he's done very much work with Bruno Fernandes, because with Bruno Fernandes, they bought the finished article in terms of ability, in terms of mentality. But Martial needed some work, and he needed some love, and he needed some tough love. And Mourinho just wanted to boot him out of the club. And Solskjaer said, no, like, this guy has a lot of ability, and he's coached him and helped him and advised him and inspired him to get the best out of that ability. And I think Martial is probably the most obvious indicator of the difference between a manager like Van Gaal, who was more interested in coaching, but ultimately didn't seem to improve very many of the players, and Mourinho, who just had the ones he liked, had the ones he victimised, and seemed to find it really difficult not only to extract good performances from them, but to give them any credit when they did perform well. Like even when Luke Shaw had a good game, Mourinho said, well, that was actually because of me.
Yeah.
And Solskjaer has turned that around to be what goes on at United is not because of him or even because of the players, it's all about the club. And we see with Jurgen Klopp at Liverpool, if Jurgen Klopp has really good players at Liverpool, of course he does, but think about how many of those players that Jurgen Klopp has were brilliant players till they encountered Jurgen Klopp. The answer is maybe one or two. Mane was a good player. Salah was a good player. Wasn't a brilliant player. He's a brilliant player now. And that is because of Jurgen Klopp. And if you gave Guardiola's players to Jurgen Klopp, he would probably win the league. If you give Pochettino's Tottenham players to Jurgen Klopp, he'd have probably won the league with them. If you gave any other manager Jurgen Klopp's players, I don't think Liverpool would probably be champions now. And one of the reasons is because Jurgen Klopp has created something there. It's not just his brilliant tactics or whatever and strategies. It's the way that he brings people in the club together, the players, the staff, the supporters. And that's when you get something that lasts and you get repeated winning. And it looks like that is something that Ole's trying to craft. And he might not be good enough to achieve it because ultimately in the next couple of years, in order to win any of the big pots, he's going to have to be better than Klopp and Guardiola. And that is a big ask. And not being as good as them is not a very good insult because those two blokes are brilliant. But Solskjaer is heading down the kind of track where you make people feel happy coming to work and you create an actual club rather than a team. And that was something that neither of the other two managers threatened to do or even really showed the remotest interest in doing.
Who is the next Anthony Martial, in your opinion, Daniel, aka the next player that is a bit of a sleeper in this Manchester United squad, whose mentality needs another tweak and they can go to the next level under Solskjaer?
Well, the two players I used to think and say were players who looked like they'd got to where they'd got to mainly on talent were Martial and Luke Shaw. Luke Shaw still has a lot of work to do, but it was noticeable when he was injured that I found myself saying, United are really missing Luke Shaw here, which weren't words that anyone ever expected to say. And in the last couple of months, particularly, but also before the break, he was forming a really interesting triangle down the left with Rashford and Martial. And he's going to need to keep doing that, and he's going to need to improve, and he's going to need to... And he had, just before he got injured, he'd started actually creating chances by himself. Like there was a couple of open nets, more or less, that were missed against maybe Palace, that were created by him. And he's going to need to start doing that and start doing more of that, because when you're looking to strengthen, left-back is one of the positions you'd be looking at. But the fact that he's left-footed is good because Brandon Williams isn't left-footed, and you can see the difference in the balance, although Williams played well, I thought, yesterday. But I'd also have another fullback coming through called Ethan Laird, who is mainly a right-back, but he is I would imagine he's going to be forcing his way into the first team by the end of next season because he's extremely talented. So Luke Shaw would be the one who I think has a bit more to give, but he's also going to have to find more to give because if he doesn't, his place is going to be under threat.
It certainly has been a transformative season in terms of how we think of Solskjaer, and he's had enough time now to build and say this is discernibly my culture. As a result, he's now there for the long term, kind of irrespective of what the start of next season is like. Is that what we're saying? That we've reached a point where we know who the Manchester United manager is for the next couple of seasons at least?
No, I don't think it would ever be like that until you start winning stuff. Maybe you win the UEFA Cup, but even then, like if United are 12th at the end of next season, he's going to get fired. And it doesn't matter what he's done this season, I would expect. Like you can only, as Roy Keane said, the only thing that goes with the flow is a dead fish. And you can't afford to stand still. So if he goes, however much money he gets to invest, and I don't know if it'll be that much, he's going to have a better team next season than he had this season. And that being the case, the expectations increase. And this season, top four was something that you would hope for because you looked at where United finished last season and you looked at the players he was allowed to sign and thought, well, actually, that's not really enough to guarantee top four. You've got a chance to top four, but you wouldn't say if you don't make top four that would be a disgrace because the players you've got aren't that good. But now we know that the players that he's got right now are more than good enough to top four. They're good enough for third. And actually, if he'd have had Fernandes all season, and if he'd have had his players, his Pogba and Martial fit for more of the season, he'd been talking about getting closer to second. And United are going to strengthen. So in order to keep your job, you've got to keep improving and get closer. And whether they're good enough to sustain a title challenge next season is going to depend partially on how much money he's allowed and how much money and whether he spends it well. But it's also going to depend on what he can get out of the players. And if he doesn't get enough out of the players, then he will be out of a job. But he's more deeply ensconced than he has been at any point since he got the job.
How many players does he need to close the gap to sustain a title challenge?
I would say if he could get two players, if everything went right and he didn't have injuries, then he'd have a chance. But I'd still expect them to tire because the strength of the squad isn't enough. But I would say the two most obvious areas of the team that needs strengthening are centre-back, although Victor Lindelof played really well yesterday. He is not the standard of a United centre-back, but you have these players when you're building in this way, and you see it with Klopp at Liverpool as well. There were players who were not rubbish, who he replaced because they weren't good enough for what he wanted to do. And Lindelof, I would say, is one of those players. He's capable of being good, so he's not someone you say, this guy's absolute nonsense, bin him. But a better centre-back than Lindelof is necessary. And that would be the first place I would probably go with either would be a centre-back or I'd go for an upgrade on Matic. Increasingly, I'm thinking that would be my first port of call, the midfield player.
Interesting how you haven't mentioned the goalkeeper.
I guess the way I look at that is that United and De Gea are stuck with each other. I can't see any way that they could shift him and his salary. So it's ultimately, we know that he is good at goalkeeping. It's a mental thing. And they have to find a way, between them of making that better. I wouldn't go and bust half of my budget for the summer on a goalkeeper when I had De Gea. I guess I would hope that we could sort the De Gea problem out, and if not, then we'd have to go with Romero until next summer because I just think that there are other areas of the team where you don't have someone who's potentially someone who could be more than good enough. The thing with De Gea that's odd is that the areas in which he's always needed to improve, he's never improved. He doesn't come for crosses and he doesn't kick well. And those are like things you could work on and become good at. I know quite easily I'm not saying easy in I could do it, but if you're someone like him, those are things you should be able to improve. But no, I wouldn't go for a goalkeeper. I'd go for a replacement for Matic. Increasingly, watching United over the last few weeks, that would be my priority because it's become clear, I think, to teams that play United, if you press United, if you press Matic and the defenders, then they struggle to get the ball out because because basically it's only Pogba who's a reliable passer, except Pogba's not always a reliable passer because he takes risks in areas that he shouldn't. So I would say you want a replacement for Matic. That would be the first thing that I would do. Then the best centre-back that you could possibly find, and obviously it looks like they're going to buy Jadon Sancho. Now, I I've seen Jadon Sancho play a fair few times. I've never seen him play and thought this is a brilliant player. But enough people that have seen him much more than me say that if you get the opportunity to sign him, then you just have to do it. So I guess I'm prepared to accept that. And United do need a right winger. And also what we saw in the last few weeks of the season was that there was no alternatives outside the front three. So another player is essential, and someone that you can bring in to make sure that you can rest players. So what I think will happen, the first choices will be Jadon Sancho and a centre back. I'm not even sure they wants to buy a midfield player at this point, but if they can then raise enough money from sales, they'll get the chance to buy another player of some sort. But that's what I would expect to happen.
Is Declan Rice the actual perfect player, because he can play either in midfield or as a centre back, and he could have a really good Manchester United career with either of those positions, but while he is still developing as a player, you can play him in both. So Lindelof can come in and out of the team if he needs to be rested. Matic can come in and out of the team if he needs to be rested. Matic is still, they've obviously signed him to a new deal, so he's the type of player who will play 25 to 30 games next season. And let's face it, they're going to be playing 65 games next year, a lot of them at very high intensity, where you're going to need a lot of bodies.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I think with Rice, he's someone who seems to have improved quite a lot recently. I don't know. I think that if you sign someone like that, you say this is your position and you play them there. But if he's going to be a centre-back, then centre-backs generally tend to develop more slowly than strikers, because strikers much more about instinct and improvisation. Whereas to play centre-back, you need to think about your game quite a lot. You need to think about what the opponent's going to do, and it's something that you learn. Even however natural a defender that you are, most strikers more or less are as good as they're going to be when they're 23, 24. They might stay that good for quite a long time, but they're learning the game still, but ultimately they're much closer to their ceiling at that point. Whereas if you sign someone like Declan Rice and you're moving him to play centre-back from midfield, number one, you want him to learn that position. And number two, you want to build a partnership with whoever he's going to play. So I wouldn't want to sign someone like that, like Declan Rice, and say, well, we'll play you sometimes here and a bit there. It would be more, this is what you are. And in an emergency, then they might play him somewhere else. But also as a midfield player, when you're playing someone in front of the back four, particularly when the other two midfielders are Pogba and Fernandes, then learning positioning and learning when to pass the ball, because more or less you're learning how to control the pace of the game. And again, there are very few players in their teens or early 20s that are good enough to do that. I mean, there are very few players who are 27, 28 who are good enough to control the game. And if you're getting someone in and intending them to do that, then you just want them to settle in. You don't want them to be thinking about what position they're going to be playing next week. You want them to learn the position and to play the position. Earlier on in the season, and last season, when I saw Declan Rice play, he looked a bit like a centre-back playing in midfield. But over the last few weeks, he's actually looked much more like a midfield player. I thought he played really well against United the other day, and his passing's improving, and we can see that he can shoot from distance as well. Again, I need to see more of him, because his short game needs to be good. I would say to play that position, the main thing that you need to be able to do is you need to be able to pass the ball forward quickly, and ideally off both feet. And you need to also be able to do that under pressure. And that's why Sergio Busquets was the greatest player at playing that position, because he could do those things. He could find the yard and he could pass the ball forward quickly. Paul Scholes could do it as well. And if you play someone like Rice there, who's not a runner, because City do it a different way. City play two attacking midfield players usually, and then they have Fernandinho sort of covering a third of the pitch almost, extends from the centre circle backwards. And City tend to do it more with legs than with passing. So you need to decide what kind of player you want. If you're signing Declan Rice, I don't think he's someone who's going to cover as much distance. So what he would need to do would be need to control the game, control the tempo of the game with the passing, and make sure that if another team was pressing, you don't necessarily need to get the ball wide or long to get around it, but you have someone who can pick clever 5, 10, 15-yard passes to get things moving. And that's the kind of player that United would need. And I'm not certain that Declan Rice could do it, but I certainly think it's more possible than I did 4 months ago.
So you wouldn't be disappointed if he signs, but you're not entirely convinced that it's going to be an automatic straightaway success?
It's not that I'm not convinced, it's that I would feel that I don't feel convinced. I don't feel I have seen enough 90 minutes of Declan Rice to say, yeah, this is definitely the case. What I would say is that my friend, colleague at The Guardian, Jacob Steinberg, has seen a lot of Declan Rice, and he thinks Declan Rice is a really, really good player. But he's seen a lot more of West Ham, so I guess although I give the impression of having a lot of opinions, I try and restrict them to things I actually feel like I've got the right to have an opinion about, and Declan Rice isn't one of those things. So I think that I like what I've seen over the last kind of 4 or 5 months, but if I wanted to know about Declan Rice, I would definitely ask someone that has seen more of Declan Rice than I have.
All in all, it's been a very positive season from Manchester United's perspective, given how low they were at the end of the Mourinho era. Is that a fair summation of where we are at the moment?
Yeah, for sure. It was difficult at times. What's been good for United about this season is even in the dog days of Pereira in midfield, they managed to find performances in the big games. If you look at the top of the table, Liverpool, they lost to twice, but they were within a few minutes of beating them at Old Trafford. And actually, if they'd have had Bruno Fernandes, then they might have got something at Anfield as well. They've beaten Chelsea 3 times out of 4. They've beaten City 3 out of 4, and they've beaten Leicester twice. And they've got a win and a draw against Tottenham and a win and a draw against Sheffield United. So that is good. That's better than good, actually. That's excellent. And what they started to do is they started to beat the teams that they should have beat. So they should always be beating, and they've actually started to do it in style. There was a drop-off towards the end of the season when they got knackered, but you can see that they've reached a point now where their bottom level is increasing and their top level is increasing, and they now need some tweaks to elevate both of them. They need to fill the holes in the team, and they need to strengthen the squad a bit too. But ultimately, if someone had offered you 3rd place, quarterfinals of the UEFA, then you would say, yeah, that is all right. And they also got to the semi-finals of the other 2 cups. They were close against City, and again, if they signed Bruno Fernandes in time to play City in the first game, that might have, at home in the League Cup, that might have made a difference. And they were still quite close. So. Yeah, it hasn't been overwhelmingly positive because there was a lot of negativity in the first part of the season, and rightly so. But as soon as they got all the players fit, they look like a team. Yeah. And it's a long time since we've been able to say that.
Well, Daniel, great stuff. Enjoy what remains of the off-season. Obviously, there's plenty of European football to look forward to as well, so we'll obviously talk to you very soon. In the meantime...
Right, see you again. Have a good day.
Cheers. That's Daniel Harris as the dust settles on the Premier League season from yesterday. Loads more Premier League coverage coming your way in the next while as well. We're going to check in on Paul Merson and Ray Houghton to see what the Villa celebrations were like from their perspective. But at 8:38 this morning, on a Monday morning, it's time for us to have a look at who's under the most pressure after the weekend.
For me, it was a self-imposed pressure.
Was I under pressure? No.
Yeah, they're under pressure. Everyone's under pressure.
OTB AM's Pressure Rankings with Gillette.
And the big pressure.
Yeah, so every Monday morning on OTB AM, we're going to be bringing you our Gillette Pressure Rankings. What are we looking at this week, Owen?
Yeah, we're going to do a special Premier League managerial pressure. I was going to call it a managerial merry-go-round pressure rankings. We can call it the pressure go-round if you want. You can call it whatever you want. We're going to do a top 5 to 1. Here are the 5 Premier League managers under most pressure, I feel, going into the new season. At number 5, and you might disagree with this, is Dean Smith. Like, call me affected by what Roy Keane said last night, but I think there's a little element of truth to what Roy Keane is saying, insofar as this is possibly the last note of positivity before things start to get real. Because what will happen immediately when you pick up tomorrow's newspaper, and I'm sure it's in this morning's newspaper, is that Jack Grealish is going to be linked with everybody. And Jack Grealish being linked with everybody is not idle paper talk. It is something that is more than likely going to happen this summer. So you lose your best player.
Do they though? I think that Jack Grealish's behaviour over lockdown is going to give chairman pause to spend 100 million quid on somebody who ends up, one slipper, one flip-flop, pictured. There's like a track record that Jack Grealish has there. So I think there's a chance that Jack Grealish stays for one more season and that they do a deal and they sign a new contract and there's like an agreed buyout clause. But I think you're right. I actually do. I think that Dean Smith is under a little bit of pressure. And to be honest, I wouldn't be terribly surprised if at some point over the summer some celebrity managers parachuted in there. If you're a billionaire and you've invested loads and loads of money, and you're like, we just scraped out. What happened there? We just avoided relegation in the last day. I thought I invested loads of money to make sure this didn't happen. I think you're right. There's something here.
Yeah, definitely. I was kind of more thinking next season pressure. You're actually pushing him higher up the rankings than I have him. I just think that you're getting a stronger Premier League next season. Leeds and West Brom coming in instead of Norwich and Bournemouth is far stronger. Whoever wins the playoff could be better than Watford as well. But it doesn't matter. If you take Leeds and West Brom and parachute them into the Premier League, I think Villa get relegated even with Jack Grealish. So they need to spend well. And immediately, I think that Dean Smith will be on the hot seat next season.
Would you be completely shocked if on Wednesday morning Dean Smith ended up being sacked and Rafa Benitez or somebody else of that ilk was suddenly parachuted in? This is the Premier League. Weird stuff happens. I'm not saying I want that to happen. I love the romance of having a manager who supports the club, but ultimately, this is a billion-dollar enterprise that they're trying to create. They see the value, and having a team that is yo-yoing up and down, not great for business. So, would you be terribly surprised if that happens?
I would be surprised. I think that it's different. I think that if this is the club that's been in the Premier League for a number of years and that they've managed to fight by the skin of their teeth, I think the owners have alarm bells ringing. This is a club that just came up from the Championship. This is about their level. This is the level for any team who's come up from the Championship, avoid relegation. Now, they may look elsewhere in the Premier League and say, I was just about to make that point. Look at what Chris Wilder is doing with Sheffield United. So the form isn't necessarily to just be in a relegation scrap. Villa would have absolutely fancied their chances against Sheffield United in the Championship last season. So why have Sheffield United managed to make that step forward?
Oh, and look, we'll see if they manage to maintain that. Just a reminder, though, that every week here in the Gillette Pressure Rankings on OTB AM, we're going to be giving you the chance to win a Gillette Skin Guard starter pack. Just get in touch with us over the weekend and tell us who you think should be on our pressure rankings. We haven't done the new Watford manager, but that's been one of the suggestions from MMM on Twitter. Carlo Ancelotti is on the way out of Everton, lads. 12th this season, such a disappointing year. He's the Italian Big Sam. I keep telling you, Bernard on YouTube says Carlo Ancelotti must be under pressure. Same will not be good enough for Everton. I think Carlo Ancelotti has a window of opportunity this off-season and into next season, because I think that he just needs to... I don't think he's under pressure just yet. I could be wrong about that. Who's on our list?
Just on Ancelotti, I think if you look at a club that gets kind of carried away by the fact that you could get a shiny new manager, well, Everton won't be one of those clubs because they have a shiny old manager in there. They won't be sacking Carlo Ancelotti. He's not making our pressure rankings. At number 4, and I think we might disagree over this one, is Frank Lampard. You don't think he's under any pressure from what I can gather from a conversation that we've had in the past? You think he is a club legend? I put it to you this way. Frank Lampard has already spent a ton of money going into next season. They absolutely need to turn that money into a Premier League title challenge. Otherwise, Frank Lampard is in trouble. The next step up from qualifying for the Champions League, and the same goes for Manchester United, who we'll get to in a moment, but the next step up is to mount a title challenge. They were the last Premier League winners, not called Manchester City or Liverpool. Roman Abramovich will think this is a return to form. Those in the hierarchy of Chelsea Football Club will think it is a return to their normal stance for them to be challenging for the Premier League. They spent that money on Timo Werner. He was there yesterday. They're going to spend big money on Kai Havertz. The Declan Rice thing, that could be to Chelsea. That points towards a Premier League title challenge that the board will expect, and I'm not sure Frank Lampard will deliver it.
I understand all those energy drinks have rotted your brain and all that time spent sitting in your underwear playing computer games, and so your attention span is dead. I understand that that's where you are right now, and I we can probably do some counselling afterwards to get you out of that scenario. Anybody who has paid any attention to what has happened with Chelsea over the last while realises that Roman Abramovich has some favoured sons. One of them is John Terry. Another of them was Jose Mourinho, to the point where he brought him back. While after he'd sacked Mourinho the first time, he bought him a Ferrari to make up for it. This is the person who had now finally has the son he never had as the manager of the football club that he had lost. He didn't care about. If you look at the way that Chelsea became this brilliant business over the last while, where they discovered all of these amazingly talented young players, many of whom never actually made it at the club. They went off. You think of De Bruyne, you think of Salah, you think of Nathan Ake, for God's sake. This is a club who actually fully understands exactly what their business model had been for the last couple of years. Now, all of a sudden, they're spending money again on players. Why is that? I'll tell you why that is. Because the owner has decided, look at my super yacht. This is my Chelsea super yacht. You know he's got the biggest super yachts in the world, right? I think he might even have 2 of them. So this is a man for whom there is no joy in life beyond actually seeing your family achieve something. And Frank Lampard is his boy. He's not Frank Lampard Jr. He's Roman Abramovich Jr. This is the moment that Abramovich has been waiting for, where this whole thing comes full circle, and it's going to be created by one of his own. You're saying he's under pressure. Frank Lampard could lay a big turd on the board table, and everybody like, what was that? And I'd be like, the dog did it. They're going to cover up for him.
Not true. A lot of what you're saying here is just not true.
It's all true.
None of the signings that Roman Abramovich has made for his loved son have even come in their top 5 signings. Like Timo Werner, big splash, but he's their 6th most expensive signing. These managers that he apparently didn't love like his son got prized assets such as Kepa, their record signing, Alvaro Morata, Jorginho, Christian Pulisic, Fernando Torres is still in their top 5 record signings.
Fernando Torres, he was still interested in football at that stage.
These are all gifts given to people not called Frank Lampard. The only reason he bought Jose Mourinho a Lamborghini was to say sorry for appointing Abraham Grant, the most boring man in the world. He wanted to give himself an injection of excitement by buying somebody a Lamborghini. That is the only reason why he bought Jose Mourinho a Lamborghini. But also the Mourinho thing is exactly the point here, that he loved Jose. He brought Chelsea the greatest era of success they had ever seen at that point, and he still sacked him. But he, I guess, still also had the cojones to actually go back and reappoint Jose Mourinho and mend that bridge. So what is stopping him from sacking Frank Lampard if things get bad next season? He would like to mend that bridge as well. He knows that money can buy anything, and money can buy friendship, even if you're enemies for a little while. Frank Lampard, if they do not mount a title challenge next season, I think is under pressure from the board.
This is right now. This is our pressure rankings. He is the 4th most pressurised manager in the Premier League at the moment.
Yes.
I cannot see that. I think that he's going to be sitting back going, I've got a brilliant young squad. I've got young players coming through. I'm learning the ropes myself. And I've got the support of like the vast majority of the English media press corps, and the clippings are coming through every day, and they're like, Lampard doing a great job. Lampard's football is good. Lampard really learning. Lampard future England boss. And Roman Abramovich is like, that's my boy. Come on, let's have a little party on the yacht.
I disagree. Come have a party on the yacht, fine, but you don't need to be a Chelsea manager to do that. If you got sacked by somebody and that person who sacks you rings you up and says, do you want to come party on my yacht? I'm probably saying, forgive you for sacking me. I'll come party on your yacht, no problem. Where is the yacht at? Monaco? No bother. Will you pay for my flights there, Roman? Yes, he will. So I think that people can be bought off pretty easily if it comes to having any angst. The question is, your theory will be supported if they go out and Havertz is their record signing and they go out and spend like a 100 million bill on another individual. I guess the thing that really supports is that they haven't had a full transfer market to show just how much Roman Abramovich really loves Frank Lampard, because of course they couldn't sign last summer. But the evidence from previous managers is that they had a lot of money thrown at them as well. And that, for me, isn't exactly a sign that Roman Abramovich...
They were a club who had to break even. The whole business model changed to the point where they were deciding that they weren't going to be a club that was investing heavily. And I think that there's going to be a massive imbalance over the next couple of years where they actually spend as much as they're legally under financial fair play allowed to do, and they push that envelope as far as they possibly can. Watch as they kind of start to harvest the players they have on loan and sell those, or do deals to make sure that they're able to spend as much in some key areas as they had. And you can see from the level of investment, it's ramped up massively all of a sudden, because I think they believe in this project and they believe in the manager. And I think that he's going to end up being the longest tenured Abramovich appointment. That's a hostage to fortune right there. But I'm pretty sure that Frank Lampard, when all is said and done, is going to turn out to be the manager who lasts the longest at Chelsea in the Abramovich era.
Still doesn't mean that he's not under pressure. Of course, if he goes and wins the Premier League title next season, then that will feel like Abramovich's greatest moment, Chelsea's greatest moment, because they've done it with somebody who came through, who came through at a relatively young age. Obviously, came from West Ham, but they definitely feel like a claim to Frank Lampard at Chelsea, and it will beat everything else.
Frank Abramovich Jr.
The key point is actually getting over the line and winning the Premier League, and I'm not sure they're actually going to do that. I think they're actually investing money in the wrong place. You watched them against Liverpool last week. Defensively, they're desperate.
I don't think they need to win the league next season. I don't think that's true at all. I think
they need to challenge. I think it's a hair's breadth between first and second next season again.
Play good football. Make me enjoy my trips to my TV where I watch this, because I'm still not really in England that much, which is, let's wait and see. I'm saying no.
At number 3, we've got Jose Mourinho. Jose Mourinho, is he ever a man who's not under pressure? Well, I think you put yourself under added pressure when you are celebrating and being jubilant and hugging and cheering when you finished 6th in the Premier League. Like, I mean, it's one thing if Roy Keane is going to have a go at Aston Villa for celebrating staying in the Premier League. That is, you know, a big achievement. Tottenham seemed pretty happy with themselves as well for finishing 6th and qualifying for the Europa League, which obviously is going to be their European conquest next season. Jose Mourinho is under massive pressure for a number of reasons here. First of all, the chairman has form on making big decisions based on a small-ish sample size. Mauricio Pochettino sacking this year shocked a lot of people. People felt that he deserved a hell of a lot longer than he got. Will Jose Mourinho get a bit of extra time because he's Jose Mourinho? Maybe. I don't necessarily think so, because of the reason that they have the remnants of a golden generation of players that they don't want to let go. Now, personally, I think that golden generation is contracting with every passing day, and Harry Kane really becomes your sole prized asset. His contract runs for another few years, but with every passing year, there is a depreciating value here, and decreasing value here. And I think that once you get to this time next year, and Tottenham Hotspur are not in the Champions League, the Kane out bandwagon gathers a lot of momentum. Can you stand by that manager who will be responsible for that table position, which will allow Kane to actually eke his way out of the club? You cannot stand by that. And for that reason, I think if there are early signs that they will not gather top 4 momentum, then Jose Mourinho is a dead man walking.
Because of Harry Kane, essentially.
Harry Kane, I think that they have modelled their entire team around him, but if any one squad in the Premier League is dependent on one player's existence at the club, I think Harry Kane probably has higher importance as an individual than anybody else in the Premier League. It's just the fatness of that contract. But the Aubameyang contract is quite short. They need to sign him up. Then that could be the new one. But it's the length of this contract that is so important to Tottenham at this moment. It was an incredible piece of business to get him to commit to the club for so long. And everything did look rosy in the garden at that point. But Harry Kane didn't know Jose Mourinho was going to be coming into the club at this point. Like after the Sheffield United defeat a few weeks back, Spurs looked in a very, very bad position. Kane was playing well, but he possibly could have been played in a better system by Jose. He has turned this around in recent weeks. Let's not forget that. They have been very good in recent weeks. But Jose Mourinho can often have a little upturn in fortune before things turn sour again. And we know that things always end up sour with Jose Mourinho. So if that comes next season, or there's evidence of that starting next season especially, I think he's under pressure to actually get sacked.
Okay, I think I can probably go along with the Mourinho pressure. But you and your buddy Anson Boom were chatting about this, and he's a Spurs fan. He's like, no, I want to see what he's going to do when he's been given a bit of an opportunity and a bit of time. And we've had Martin Lipton on, and he's like, he hasn't been given an opportunity yet. So he has to be given the possibility of restructuring this squad in whatever image he wants to do. Now, it seems like his image is a little bit, and his style of football is a little bit out of date, so let's wait and see. But I can't see them sacking him, because aren't they still paying off Pochettino? And they're quite parsimonious when it comes to this type of stuff, so...
I think, paying off 2 managers at once would be probably...
Not very Spursy.
Not very Spursy, to say the least. At number 2, we've got Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. I don't think he's under immediate pressure, but this kind of comes back to... So I think what I mean here is I think he will be under pressure immediately once the first ball is kicked next season. Same situation as Frank Lampard here. He qualified for the Champions League. Manchester United has gone one step further and actually got that number 3 spot, which a lot of Manchester United fans will now be pushing as their agenda this season. You know, the best team not called Manchester City or Liverpool in the Premier League, it's Manchester United. So what is the next step for a team that finished 3rd in the Premier League? It's even more obvious in the Chelsea situation. They have to try and crack the big 2. Can that Manchester United squad crack the big 2 next season? I don't believe so. I think that the signs have been extremely good at times this season, but I don't think there is anywhere near the level of consistency, especially at the back, that Liverpool and Manchester City have brought to the past 2 or 3 seasons Manchester United can bring immediately.
Well, can I just, so think back to how long did it actually take Jurgen Klopp to get Liverpool to the point where they were all going in the same direction? I don't know if you remember, there was a slew of injuries almost immediately he arrived because he was training them too hard, and there was everybody whining, and then there was problems that, it took him a long time to get that churn of players, particularly that group of players he wanted out, and to get the ones who were there to give them the freedom to be the ones who were in charge. And we're seeing that happen at Old Trafford at the moment. And so I would say that if you're the owners for the first time in a long time, you're looking at this going, and this was the point I was making earlier on with Daniel Harris, that actually here is somebody who's making long-term decisions as opposed to short-term, I need to win this game because my job depends on it, which was what Van Gaal was at fairly early on. And Mourinho clearly was not staying there for the long haul. So didn't care if a load of money was given to Sanchez, didn't care if a load of money was given to De Gea, because it was well, I'm here for 3 seasons max, and let's wait and see, how far can I get? Do I want this little bauble? Yes, I do. Do I want to keep that player happy? Yes, I do. With Solskjaer, that's not the case. I think he's legitimately saying, I am not going to just bow to whatever agent pressures there are. I'm going to make sure that this relationship that we have is the right one for us. I think he's handled the Pogba situation relatively well, particularly for somebody who's inexperienced, to the point where Pogba is now essentially playing week in, week out, has stopped leaking, or his camp have stopped leaking to the press that he's available or wants to move or is at least considering it. I actually think that he is as secure a manager in the Premier League as there is, beyond obviously the ones who have just won the title, and in Guardiola, the one who the whole club was built around to try and seduce him to come there.
It's Manchester United. You're always going to be in and around the top when it comes to these pressure rankings. I just think that there is an added sense of responsibility on what they do next. Following Jose Mourinho could be a disaster in one way because he tends to leave a trail of destruction whenever things go wrong. But it's also a great thing in another way, where the turbulence of one manager really needs to be replaced by somebody who is a steady hand. And Solskjaer immediately showed that. Now, things took a dip and they're starting to take an upturn at the moment. You're absolutely right when it comes to the Jurgen Klopp situation. He comes in 2015, 2017-18. It's really the end of that season before things start to get really good. Now, is Jurgen Klopp given a bit of added time because what he had done in the Bundesliga? It's probably a bit of that, but also in terms of the recruitment, as you mentioned, and the signs that there could be greater output from the players that he had with a little bit of extra time.
Who's number one?
And then perhaps that is the sense with Manchester United. At number one, though, we've got Pep Guardiola and Manchester City. Like we mentioned this last week, there is no club under greater pressure at the moment to actually just go and deliver. Just go and deliver. It comes immediately. It comes against Real Madrid in a few weeks' time. They lose that, there will be a lot of people circulating videos of Pep Guardiola celebrating Manchester City's actual existence in the Champions League. Next year, if they get knocked out early in the Champions League or before the final, the same thing will be circulated, and the season after that. They've put that on themselves, but they've also put the pressure on themselves for the Premier League next season. 18 points off Liverpool is how they finished. It was a terrible, terrible season by their own standards from the previous couple of years. As I said a moment ago, I expect next season to be a hair's breadth. I expect them to be back. But that is such a casual thing to say. It's what we expect of Manchester City. If Manchester City live up to this season's expectations, deliver 80-something points again this season, Pep Guardiola is under massive pressure.
Yeah.
There's no two ways about it.
I can see this. I can totally see this. If you want to get involved in this conversation, 087 180 180 is the WhatsApp number. And every week on the Gillette Pressure Rankings on OTB AM, we're going to give you the chance to win a Gillette Skin Guard starter pack. Get in touch with us over the weekend. Tell us who you think should be on our pressure rankings. And the winner this week is Keith Brennan. With Manchester United making Champions League, they will now have additional budget for transfers. So fringe players like Jesse Lingard, Fred, McTominay and Mata are definitely under pressure. That's a very good point. I would suggest that most of those, with the exception of McTominay, well, actually Fred, Brian Kerr was giving Fred a big shout out yesterday when he was talking with Joe Malloy in the aftermath of the game. Good man Keith Brennan, you are this week's winner, and we'll be in touch with you to give you details of how you're going to pick up that Gillette Skin Guard starter pack, as in we'll send it to you. Don't worry, you don't have to come in and pick it up. But yeah, so that is this week's Gillette Pressure Rankings here on OTB AM. Now, time for the sports pages.
OTB AM.
We're going to start with OTB Sports for you, otbsports.com for you this morning, and it is Brian Kerr and the positions Manchester United need to address for next season. Not a million miles away from some of the conversations that we've just been having there. Everton's Leighton Baines announces retirement from football. What a fantastic career he's had. Roy Keane not impressed with Villa's survival celebrations, and Eddie Howe reflecting on a lot of pain, fairly emotional. His changing room was a bit different from the Villa one. So. Dean Smith, I expect him to get drunk with me tonight. That was him talking about Jack Grealish's future. So let me run you through the back page headlines for you very quickly here. I'll start with the tabloids. Irish Daily Star, heaven and hell. So it's heaven for Man United, it's hell for Watford. Interesting story here from Paul Lennon. Ireland's Nations League group opener against Bulgaria on September the 3rd could be moved from Sofia to a neutral venue. That's due to mounting concerns in UEFA over the rising number of COVID-19 cases across Europe, and particularly in the eastern and Balkan regions of the continent. So Ian Barraclough has apparently confirmed already that the Northern Ireland-Romania game is under review, and there's a possibility that we could end up with the Ireland game under review as well, which might not be the worst thing for us. Agony and ecstasy, it's along the same lines, heaven and hell. Agony and ecstasy, it pays your money, it takes your choice. The agony is Watford, the ecstasy is Villa and United. Real deal. Ole hails Champions League clinchers, and Greal deal. 70 million is what they want, apparently, for Jack Grealish. So, I don't know. Would you take the money? You probably would take 70 million if you got it. Do you? I mean, I don't know. There's Jack Grealish drinking a beer. Not great for his transfer value. Jack the lad. Grealish saves Villa, and boss Smith orders him to get drunk. Not a great look, especially because he's had some issues, you know. Mayo boost as veteran Boyle back for club. So Colin Boyle made some, I think 30 minutes of a club appearance after doing ligament damage earlier in the year. So that's good news for them. I'll bring it to the English papers. The Times, Broad powers England to the brink. England are playing Ireland this week, aren't they, in the one-day international? That's the third test against the West Indies, I presume it is, yeah. And the Guardian, delight from top to bottom, United into Champions League as Villa stay up just with a very, very low points total. Solskjaer's inner belief. Sorry, that's the Irish Independent there. Stick that one back up for me. I believe in what I do. Solskjaer aims to build on third spot. And that's one of the several pictures from around the country of people using heavy industrial machinery to peek in over the sidelines of some club GAA matches. And the Herald, fairly similar story to that one. Solskjaer's inner belief, boss is keen for United to deliver more next season. And I'm going to do the Racing Post for you. The Wonder Mare's brave call over Enable justified by third King George. Enable's historic third victory in the King George and Queen Elizabeth Stakes at Ascot on Saturday justified the decision to keep her in training this year, whatever else happens, according to the racing manager for Khalid Abdullah. And Villa celebrate great escape. That is Jack Grealish. They celebrated so wildly that they forgot to defend from the kickoff. It's, you know, kind of fairly typical of Villa's season. It's like, yeah, this is a nice thing, isn't it? Oh, balls. The other team can score too. Front page of the Examiner Sport, back with a bang. Castlehaven sparkle as GA clubs get belated summer underway. And yeah, so there are loads of GA stories there, including more from Anthony Daly on the summer of 1998. And that's Tui Varus. That was the back of the Indo for that one. And yeah, that's essentially it. I'll do the Irish Times for you finally. It's just a picture of Anthony Martial, Fernandes and Lingard. Secure third for United. Absurd to rank Silva among the Premier League's best, as Ken Early's column today. And that's it. There's loads of stuff there. The Jesse Lingard goal in the 98th minute with his last kick of the season. Paddy Parrott obviously had a bet at the start of the year. Lingard, no goals, no assists. And a lot of people had done the bet and had been on Twitter every match recently when Lingard was barely getting any game time going, come on, don't do it. And then with the last kick of the season, he manages to lose the bet for everybody. I have never seen a season-long bet lost so spectacularly on the last moment. But in fairness, fair play to Paddy Parrott, they paid out for it. Because I'd say almost nobody did it, because it seems like it was such a ridiculous thing to do at the start of the year when there was no Bruno Fernandes, so he was going to play loads of games. Is Lingard finished?
You would have thought so, yeah. It's very hard to see a future for him there, especially with some of the attacking talents that they're being linked with. He's just Like the thing that they tend to say about Jesse Lingard, though, is that he seems to be a very positive influence around the dressing room. And that's never a bad thing. That if he wants to stay at the club and is happy enough playing in the FA Cup, Carabao Cup, and potentially making a Premier League appearance here and there over Christmas or when injuries mount up, do you keep him there because he's a positive influence? Maybe you do.
No,
you know,
no, I would be a positive influence if I was getting 100 grand a week. I'd be like the happiest man in the world. It's one of the best jobs in football, being a squad player at Man United, where it's like, how much are you getting? Yeah, I'm getting actually twice that, but it doesn't really matter because we're all rich. He signed like a 20 million guaranteed contract. Of course he's going to be a positive influence around the dressing room.
It's true. It is true. Perhaps, and like he would be blocking the path of a younger player there because let's not forget Jesse Lingard is about 27, 28 now, which is always a surprising statistic to actually hear. Like the thing is, if you can obviously get an upmark in that fee or make some sort of profit off him, you get rid of him. But it's going to be very, very hard to do that. Like he seems destined to become an Everton player. It just seems that there is no way that Alex Iwobi, Jesse Lingard, and Theo Walcott can't be playing in the same team next season. It is destiny. It is the Bible and the prophecy was that those three were destined to be playing together for Everton at some point, flailing towards a 9th or 10th place position next season. So hopefully he does make that happen and the prophecy is fulfilled. But I wouldn't be surprised if he is still a Manchester United player next season. Let's
tell you what's on the OTB Sports app this morning. This is the best place to watch us, to listen to us, to consume any of our content, to subscribe to our podcasts. You can download it for free in the App Store. Just search OTB Sport. And then the home feed is all our latest stories. So that's the news coming through from our newsroom and the stories that are coming from the shows and content that we produce. You get to personalise that to whatever sports you actually want yourselves. And then you can click on radio, which is our live radio stream, which is continuous 24 hours of all our best material and our live shows. The video is live, so if you want to watch us, you can do it there in your pocket. And then the podcast, it's the best podcast player to listen to and subscribe to our stuff because we'll ping you a little message anytime that we have uploaded stuff for you. GAA's back on TV, Owen. What was it like for you? What was that experience like?
I really enjoyed it. I saw a bit over the course of the weekend. Watching the Piershig against Kilmallock on Friday was probably the only game I actually sat down and watched in full. Saw bits and pieces of what was happening over the last couple of days as well. It feels like the same thing, doesn't it? Except you can hear a little bit more what the players are saying. Like you could hear Joe Canning roaring at the sideline official saying it today, I didn't effing pull his face guard and things like that, which I'm all for.
He didn't.
I'm all for.
Yeah,
it's true. And the most impressive thing about that, as far as I'm aware, TG Cahir didn't go, we apologise for any bad language in Irish, obviously, but they didn't do that. So I'm all for the fact that TG Cahir are put that mic closer to the effing and blinding GAA player on the pitch. All for that. By all accounts, I didn't sign up to any of them, but by all accounts, all the streaming over the course of the weekend went really well. A lot of the big games across the country streamed for a service. €5 seems to be the average going rate around the country. Apparently, they all were absolutely worthwhile, brilliant service to have. And the games that were live to us on television for free, because I'm cheap like that, wouldn't be paying my £5, not yet anyway. I just thought they were perfect. And you know what I loved having back was just GAA people saying GAA things, like the Piershig and Kilmarnock crowd actually talking after the game and saying, oh sure, we'll focus on next week, still a long way to go. Brilliant to hear that. And then Shane Dowling, who looks set to become one of the great new pundits. I don't want to say he eviscerated his teammates on Friday night, but he was pretty bloody harsh on his Piershig brethren after their defeat on Friday night, saying that they fell way below the standards, didn't want it as much as the opposition. And I was like, this guy, I don't think it's a shock to anybody, but this guy is probably going to be able to tell it like it is over the next little while, has brilliant insight, and I think he's probably going to be an excellent pundit.
The absence of fans, supporters is going to be a huge thing as we roll on, but we're only a couple of weeks away, hopefully, from things being a little bit more lax and maybe getting to that point where there are 300 people, 400 people at games, and then it's not going to feel that different.
No, and it doesn't feel that different now anyway. GAA grounds aren't like the Emirates Stadium, where every single sound is echoed around a 60,000 seater stadium. People don't tend to sing at GAA games. A lot of the GAA we watch in TG Carr happens in absolutely freezing conditions. The only thing you can hear is the collective chattering of teeth in the terraces. If you listen closely after you've shouted during a GAA game, you'll probably be able to hear yourself back on TG Carr. So it doesn't actually make a whole pile of difference. It's greatly enjoyable. And also, I know I tweeted about this on Friday night, it's 30 minutes a half. Like, it's the best possible television spectacle. You get in, you watch your game, quick water break, 4 quarters of 15 minutes. It's beautiful, short attention span stuff, and I love it. Club GAA for the win, and it's fantastic that we get the opportunity to hopefully see it in good weather over the next few weeks.
The water break is going to turn into an ad break, and then all of a sudden everybody will be complaining too much about the commercialisation of the whole thing.
The commercialisation of the GAA. Getting out of hand. Absolutely getting out of hand, so it is.
Very quickly, Liverpool on 99 points, and Brendan Rodgers falling just short with the other 2 quick stories we wanted to talk about.
Yeah, this is a bit of a bottle job from Leicester City, isn't it? Like, Brendan Rodgers, it kind of felt he knew what the situation was going to be during the week when he says it's not a total disaster. It's not a disaster that we don't actually qualify for the Champions League this weekend. And sure enough, they didn't qualify for the Champions League. If you're a manager who is already talking about the prospect of not achieving the thing that you were setting out to do, you probably aren't going to achieve the thing that you were setting out to do. And it was no surprise to me yesterday that they ended up getting beaten, despite the fact that they looked quite good for a lot of the game, or more so that Manchester United actually didn't look great for a lot of the game. And he thought that perhaps they could have nicked the win. On the Liverpool front, we mentioned this earlier, 99 points, second greatest tally ever in Premier League history, but they probably won't be given the title of the greatest ever Premier League team. That'll be for next season. If they can back it up, and they can back it up with 95 to 100 points, or go close to doing an unbeaten season, they might be installed automatically as the number 1 team ever. So these are the fine margins when you're talking about the greatest Premier League teams of all time. Yeah, that debate can continue to roil, and loads more to come for you this morning. Paul Merson and Ray Houghton are going to talk to us about Villa staying up, and we're also going to hear from Kieran Donaghy about what it's like to play in one of these games. A reminder, OTB AM is live in association with Gillette. Good mornings start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be back with Shane Hannon running us through all of the day's sports news right after these.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
They spoke about your arm not being down beside your side. I mean, this is not Irish dancing.
OTB Sports Radio.
Basketball would have been my main game.
The brand new sports radio station from Off the Ball.
That's my point. Don't play for us if you're a proud Englishman.
Live 24/7 on the OTB Sports app.
Alexa.
You have a whole new world of possibilities.
Now available on otbsports.com.
This is OTB Sports Radio.
Missing this?
This is the dream. Shahi on Fringlode. Whether you're from Cushendall in Antrim or Mount Sion in Watford, this is what it's all about.
And get this, the all-new OTB Sports app. Off the Ball, Ireland's premier sports channel, now has a new home, featuring the biggest names in Irish and world sports. Podcasts, interviews, news, commentary, analysis, plus almost 20 years of sporting archives. All free and ready when you are, at home or on the go. The new OTB Sports app. Download it now from the App Store and Google Play.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, we don't just play the game, we change it. Gillette, made of what matters.
You're welcome back. It is 13 minutes past 9 on this Monday morning. Shane Hannon is here. How are you getting on?
Morning, Owen. Keeping well, and yourself?
All good. Did yesterday kind of feel like an anticlimax? Because we had been glorifying the fact that this bizarre situation where you had a head-to-head for the Champions League place was happening, and there was a lot of excitement down the bottom of the table, and things just happened as they expected. I don't want to downplay Aston Villa's party, because that was fantastic, but everything else, especially at full-time in the Manchester United game, were you not kind of like, is that it?
Yeah, I guess the build-up has been so long coming that it's when it ends with a bit of a damp squib like that. Like, yes, the United-Leicester game wasn't a fantastic game of football. Both teams were cagey, both teams were nervous. And even at the end, the fact that Leicester City, a team of their calibre, still get a Europa League position, look, obviously they'll be disappointed. I think they were 14 points clear of United in third at the end of January, so they'll be disappointed not to be playing Champions League football. But look, Europa League campaign for them is not bad. So the fact that fifth place still get European football to some degree kind of takes away from it a little bit. But yeah, I know what you mean. The anticlimax is definitely there. And the relegation battle probably had more people's attention on the final day as things turned out, because that Grealish goal followed by the Yarmolenko equaliser. For one split second, you kind of thought maybe we're going to have a disaster here for Aston Villa. But yeah, it was still quite exciting. Some seasons have been worse.
Do you not think that this was Leicester City's big chance? You know, of course, they've been there in the very recent past, very, very famously. But given the little bit of turbulence that was there at Manchester United, new manager at Chelsea, Spurs and Arsenal falling well below expectations, that Leicester City, they had this one opportunity to get back into the top four, and they sort of blew it. I don't think the Europa League is going to be comforting Brendan Rodgers when he wakes up this morning.
No, it's not a great backup prize, but well, you mentioned Jose Mourinho. He was quite happy to celebrate the Europa League as if he'd won a trophy. So
absolutely,
yeah. So it's a strange one. Like, Leicester will be disappointed in many ways. I saw a couple of people online saying, "Oh, they'll be fine. Jimmy Vardy got Premier League Golden Boot, the oldest player ever to do it. It's a nice backup prize." They don't really care about that. Jimmy Vardy cares about that, of course, but. And I think Gary Lineker was tweeting as well, saying people forget that he was also a Golden Boot winner, but of course football only began in 1992, as we know, so he gets forgotten about. But I think Brendan Rodgers will be disappointed. Obviously, there's a financial incentive to getting in the Champions League as well. It probably means he can't sign a couple of players that were high up on his priority list. They still have plenty of money to spend, I'm sure, Leicester City, but you have to look at yesterday with a bit of context as well. James Maddison, I think the cameras panned on him a couple of times sitting in the stands. Probably one of Leicester's top one or two players, you'd have to say, wasn't involved yesterday. And they weren't badly disappointing at the King Power Stadium yesterday. They lost to a United team that really have beaten all around them recently, apart from the couple of draws with Southampton and West Ham. United has been fairly impressive. So I think Solskjaer as well was quite coy in the press conference afterwards. He was saying a lot of you journalists said we were going to finish 6th or 7th, and that's a fair point. I think back to the start of the season, no one was predicting United to finish 3rd in this Premier League season. They've done it, and I think United fans still, 3rd place is not as high as an expectation of the club of Man United stature should be, but they've made it, and a lot of unexpected things happened in the last couple of weeks. I think Villa as well were 20-1 on, or outsiders to stay up. So the fact that they managed to stay up is remarkable as well, really.
Where are we starting this morning, Shane? I think it is with Manchester United, is it?
Yeah, we'll have to start with that top 4 battle, because United and Chelsea both securing qualification for the Champions League on the final day of the Premier League season yesterday, as we've been mentioning all morning. United finished 3rd thanks to that 2-0 win at Leicester. Bruno Fernandes with the penalty and Jesse Lingard with the goals in that match. Manager Ole Gunnar Solskjaer says his players will need to raise their level next season when they face better opposition in Europe.
Every midweek when we have Champions League, you've got to go with your best team. It's not like this season we've had Europa League where we could have rested players and given amount of minutes for young lads. Now we've got to go for every game, so that's another stepping stone for these.
Leicester City, as we've said, will play in the Europa League next season after Chelsea claimed 4th place with a 2-0 win over Wolves at Stamford Bridge. Aston Villa, as we mentioned, secured their Premier League status with that 1-1 draw away to West Ham. That result means Bournemouth and Watford are relegated to the Championship for next season. Watford went down after losing 3-2 at Arsenal, while Bournemouth's 3-1 win at Everton wasn't enough to keep them up. Villa boss Dean Smith believes his side benefited from the 3-month enforced shutdown.
Unfortunately, there's a lot of people, including my father, who've lost their lives due to the pandemic, and I thought we used it really well, and we had to, because we couldn't keep doing what we were doing. It's given us an opportunity to defensively get better, but also get players fitter.
Elsewhere, champions Liverpool finished off the season with a 3-1 win at Newcastle. Second place Manchester City beat Norwich 5-0 at the Etihad. That was David Silva's final league game, of course, for City. Tottenham's 1-1 draw with Crystal Palace means Jose Mourinho's side, as we've mentioned, will play in next season's Europa League, having finished 6th. Aaron Connolly scored the winner for Brighton in their 2-1 win at Burnley. A lovely finish it was, a curled finish to the bottom right-hand corner. And Southampton came from a goal down to beat Sheffield United by 3-1. Everton's Leighton Baines, meanwhile, has retired from football. He made his 420th and last appearance for the club in their 3-1 Premier League defeat to Bournemouth yesterday. The left-back won 30 caps for England and played, of course, at the 2014 World Cup in Brazil. Everton boss Carlo Ancelotti says he hopes Baines will stay on in a non-playing capacity at Everton.
Every Evertonian has to be grateful to him. He did a fantastic career here. It was a fantastic example for all his teammates. I think that we have to think we would like to keep him in the club.
Yeah, what a career Leighton Baines had at Everton. 13 years ago, he signed from Wigan Athletic back in 2007. You can read all the tributes to him on the new OTB Sports app. You can download that for free on the App Store or the Play Store. You can also see it at otbsports.com. Meanwhile, Jan Vertonghen is set to leave Spurs after his teammates paid emotional tributes after the final game of the season at Palace yesterday. The Belgian defender has not been offered a new deal at Spurs and will leave the club after 8 years of service, where he made over 300 appearances and was one of the most reliable centre-backs in the Premier League. I understand Michel Vorm, the Spurs keeper, is also to depart North London. Swansea City have a 1-0 lead over Brentford following the first leg of their Championship playoff semi-final. Cardiff City take on Fulham. That's the first leg of the other semi-final this evening. Kick-off in that game is at 7:45 p.m. The League Managers Association will announce the winners of their annual Manager of the Year awards today. Sheffield United boss Chris Wilder is the current holder of the overall prize, while Pep Guardiola has won the Premier League category for the last 2 years. Alex Ferguson is the most successful manager in the history of those awards, winning 15 trophies. The Premier League's summer transfer window opens today as well. It will last for 10 weeks, closing on October 5th. A domestic-only window will be added between the 5th and 16th of October, where Premier League clubs will only be able to trade with those in the English Football League. Juventus earned a record-extending 9th successive Serie A title as they beat Sampdoria 2-0 in Turin yesterday. Cristiano Ronaldo scored his 31st league goal of the season from Miralem Pjanic's short free kick, and Federico Bernardeschi sealed the win for them. Maurizio Sarri's side are the only team to win 9 consecutive titles in one of Europe's top 5 leagues, an extraordinary record. It extends their own record, which Bayern Munich had matched back in June. It's day one of the Galway races, which will be a lot different to any of the previous years. This year's festival will take place behind closed doors due to COVID-19. The first of 8 races at Ballybrit goes to post at 4:10. American Michael Thompson held off a late challenge from Adam Long to record a 2-stroke win at golf's 3M Open in Minnesota last night. Really emotional scenes for Thompson after he won that tournament. He finished on 19 under par, securing only his second PGA Tour win of his career, his first coming back in 2013 in the Honda Classic. And finally, for me this morning, Owen, Dimitri van den Berg secured his first major darts trophy last night. The Belgian was crowned World Match Play Champion after beating Scotland's Gary Anderson 18-10 in the final in Milton Keynes. 100-1 outsider van den Berg was making his debut at the tournament.
Great stuff, Shane. Thanks for that. Now, Kieran Donaghy joins us next on OTB AM this morning to chat about playing Club GAA over the weekend. First, though, let's hear from Saturday's OTB. Damien Delaney joined John Duggan and Dan, and he was asked who the worst trash talker he ever faced was.
Damien, was there any players that you're about to play and you know, oh God, this fella's just not going to shut up? Like, I can imagine someone like Craig Bellamy or someone who would have been pretty, he would sort of be trash talking on the pitch or whatever, getting into your head. And maybe, unless the guys that marked you felt that you were the mouthy one, actually, I mean, you could actually be the one that's guilty of this. But was there any players you're thinking, oh, this fella's going to be in my ear the whole afternoon?
No, honestly, I didn't think so. No, there was nobody really. No, you'd have little moments like where, there was a late tackle or a late elbow or something happened, and you might have a step through, but then you forget about it. You refocus on the game. I know some players do like, mouthing off. It gets them in the mood, or it gets them into focus. But to be honest with you, got enough to worry about now rather than getting involved in verbals for a long period of time with other players. I think it was more referees. Some players would just get started on referees and thinking, Jesus, how is he not sent him off yet? Or how is he letting this go? Some players would just go to town on referees.
Were you mouthy, Damien?
No, yeah, maybe a little bit, yeah. If I felt like I was wrong, I definitely would have something to say, yeah.
Did you ever feel like with talk that you can get inside somebody's head and you can actually psychologically affect them or like that, or does that really exist in the modern game?
I don't think so, no. Like I said, it's just more little moments when an incident will spark something and you will have a disagreement with someone and it might carry on for a couple of minutes afterwards. You might be shouting at each other and it might carry on a couple of minutes later in the half when something's going on and the other centre-back comes up for a corner. You might start, getting at each other, but in the main, you're kind of taught just to focus, get your head in the game, stop complaining. And usually if you're frustrated, you do get out the referees.
Yeah, Damien Delaney there speaking on Saturdays Off the Ball. You can get the full piece now on our YouTube channel. Kieran Donaghy is with us. How are you, Kieran?
How are you getting ahead?
Not too bad. Same question to you first off. Who's the worst trash talker you've ever faced?
Who's the worst?
I know I'm putting you on the spot here.
I would say about 3 or 4 of the Tyrone fellas were fairly handy. Philip Jordan, Gormley, Ricey. Joe Mack could do a bit of talking or a bit of roaring when the time was right. But yeah, they were pretty efficient at that side of the game, I would say.
How many people would pick you as the best trash talker they've ever faced?
I don't know. As I said to you before many times, I stayed fine and quiet if the fella on me stayed fine and quiet. So probably good trash talkers themselves might say I was at a bit of it, but only because they started it.
What was it like to be back on the pitch Saturday, Kieran?
Yeah, there was a good bit of it going on between myself and Micheál O'Sullivan, the fullback for Dingle too, and he's a good bit of stuff. He's wiry. He got locked into me early, and yeah, it went on pretty much the whole game. But ourselves and Dingle have been unbelievably kind of feisty battles over the last 3 or 4 years. We played them out now in Escala again for the 3rd time in a row. In the club championship. They beat us in the county championship last year. We beat them in a county league semi-final last year. So there's a great rivalry kind of built up between the teams, with kind of, you know, the games almost being kind of, you know, 50-50 at this stage, and they're a quality team. They were pretty much, I think, at full strength the last day. We've a few guys to come back into it. A young up-and-coming player, a guy called Dylan Casey, who I don't think it'll be too long before he's in with Kerry. He's coming back from a leg injury, so yeah. Look, it was good to be back out there, man. The buzz of the championship, the buzz of, you know, that bit of pain in your stomach the night before a game. That was a long time since a lot of fellas had that, and of course it was different getting physio on the side of the pitch. Thanks be to God, it was a nice evening. I don't know what we're going to do when the rain, because we know an Irish summer often brings rain, so. But yeah, look, we went through all our COVID things. We filled out our forms. We've the senior players themselves bought a high grade kind of thermometer to gauge fellas' temperatures before the games and before every training we do, just in case. That it's just an added measure that we put in ourselves. I think there's a few clubs. I heard a few clubs around it doing it, so we said we'd do it as well, just to get another bit of, you know, that if a guy comes in and he's 38 or whatever, then he's obviously sent home straight away. So. You know, we did all the protocols, and it is a bit different, but you know, between the white lines, you're really back to the primal side of it, and that was great, and that was a good feeling that I think, you know, a lot of fellas were looking forward to, because as much as you get trial games and challenge games, they're all well and good, but nothing like the white heated championship battle, I suppose.
Yeah, it seemed, certainly watching the games on television over the course of the weekend, that it looked like pretty high octane stuff. The fitness wasn't wanting, it seemed, from the outside looking in anyway. Did you feel a bit leggy at all?
No, I'm actually I put on the COVID stone, so I was in heavyweight condition back in mid-March, but I'm after losing over 1.5 stone, so I'm back to proper weight. So I actually felt really good, felt very mobile. We were ahead. We played really well in the first half, and Dingle, as they can do with the forwards, they have got a real run on us in the second half, and scored 7 in a row to go from 5 down to 2 ahead. And we brought on Shane Callaghan, the Rocky Rooch, as we call him. He came on a corner forward, and he kicked 3 absolute screamers. Single-handedly really dragged us back into the game, and Feet Namangan, who was coming back from an injury as well. 2 guys that suffered a hamstring injury 3 or 4 weeks ago and worked their tails off to kind of get back and be ready to be some kind of an impact in this game. Well, the 2 of them came on and bailed us out Saturday night. We only scored 4 points in the second half, and the 2 scubs, Shane Callaghan got 3 and Feet Namangan got 1. So that's how to make an impact for your team. And they put in 4 hard weeks of rehab. And yeah, you mentioned the fellas are fit, but they are fit, of course. That's the new age we live in. All these guys, you know, keep fit. They don't, you know, pubs were closed. Fellas couldn't go too haywire. But, you know, these younger generation guys are non-stop training, and they're into it, and they're into the weight side of it. And you can really tell when they're trying to come back from injuries that they're coming back a bit quicker now these days because of the advances in that side of it. Whereas when we were injured back in the day, it was a lot of, you know, maybe rubbing and rest or whatever. Whereas now it's all building back up the muscle and putting strength into the area that's injured and stuff that maybe necessarily wouldn't have been done 15 or 20 years ago. But nowadays it's par for the course. You can barely get a rub in a table anymore. I'm not the biggest fan of it myself. I like the old bit of I like the old bit of attention to the muscles with a bit of deep eat before games, but I still got a bit of that before Saturday night, so it got me around for 60 minutes, and I felt good in myself, really good actually.
Because that was one of the concerns actually before the resumption, that players could get injured a little easier, but that seems to have been dispelled a little bit over the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, it has. Look, certainly coming back, we did pick up a few knocks. Like, we've probably 4 or 5 fellas that are just, we 3 probably missed the game the last day, and we did 2 lads who kind of declared themselves ready for maybe 10 or 15 minutes. But it is a bit of an issue. You can do all the weights and strength, but nothing can prepare your body for adapting to a guy running at you at 100 miles an hour, and how you change direction on that, and you going at somebody else, and even your body. Like, even the first few nights back at training, the first few big collisions. Like, I was going home that night and I was like, going, Jesus, it's good to feel a bruise again. It's good to get a bang again, because we were untouched for so long. From a physicality point of view, you can do all the training and running and gym stuff and Zoom sessions, but that contact is a huge part of our game. And you're going to have fellas having a few tweaks here, and there'll be some clubs that will be unlucky. I hate to put it on physios or any of that, because a lot of these injuries are injuries that happen with contact or are going to happen anyway. And most club teams now are really well prepared. So if a team has a few more injuries than another, it just means they probably have been a bit unlucky, or else maybe the training, the physical training. We're very lucky. We've Damien Rail here with the Stacks, who's in with Kerry for a few years, top class at what he does, really advanced. He's really, done all the courses, and he's kind of pushed us onto a good level with that side of it, and kind of, I think has us in great shape, because we looked dead and buried yesterday, our Saturday night, and we came back really strong with about 5 or 6 minutes to go. So that was encouraging for us, and something for us to take in next week against Kilcummin in Connolly Park and Tralee in the second group game.
Kieran, we wanted to get your take on one of the bigger GAA stories of the last week, which has been the discourse around Dean Rock and his free-taking project. The prices made public last week, which kind of sent Twitter into a bit of a meltdown. In fairness, there was a lot of people on Twitter defending him. I'd almost go as far as to say, when it came to high-profile names, there was more people defending Dean Rock than actually having a go at him. You were one of those people. I think it's fair to say that you were probably one of the people who was most annoyed by some of the backlash Dean Rock got.
Yeah, I just thought it was over the top. I just thought it was an assassination on the guy's character, who does a lot of great work for charities in Dublin, who's given an amount of his free time up doing stuff with kids. And, I'm sure he's been at plenty of GAA grounds. I'm sure he's signed plenty of autographs. He's an unbelievable role model, as most of them Dublin fellas are. And, I was really looking at it from above anything to do with the coaching or any of that. I just thought it was the kind of, just the fact that people can sit there and put this stuff up on Twitter and have a go off a guy that's trying to start a business. And yes, it's a business, and yes, he's allowed to do that. GAA players are allowed to try and market themselves as best as possible and try and make a living for themselves, because there's so many GAA players in the country that, turn down overtime, turn down extra hours, turn down a promotion in a job because they're giving it all for their county. And when they often go and do something by themselves or something that's slightly off the cuff, it's just this kind of backlash that just bugs me. I think we're past that as a nation. I think we've moved on. I thought a lot of the comments were almost kind of, I think it was begrudgery that was in a lot of the comments, and a lot of like, how dare he even think about charging this for his fee. You go to any top coach in any top sport outside of the GAA, some of the figures are crazy. And I think if Dean Rock is looking like Dean Rock's stuff, apparently is, there's video feedback, there's very detailed analysis, there's stats on where you kicked on, like there's so much feedback in this. This isn't the kind of land onto the pitch, take an envelope and watch a guy kicking a few kicks and that's it. There's feedback to the guys. I think there's feedback even down the line, and I think there's something like that there can always be a correspondence there if a guy is struggling or whatever. So I think the service he's offering isn't, it isn't for some people, and some people can't afford it. And this was never designed really for young kids. I think a lot of people are going, oh, kids are going to be getting onto their parents to try and do this. This isn't that kind of thing. This is more senior club players that are trying to get an edge on a vital component of the game. And we have one of the best in the business offering the services. And if I was a free taker and I was 20 years of age, I'd be trying to figure out how can I meet this guy and how can I learn off him. And I think that's what his target audience is. And I just think that the jump on his back to kind of assassinate his character and how dare he start the business from the GAA. When you look at the GAA and Croke Park, it's nothing but a business. It's a great association. They do a lot for volunteers. We know that volunteers make the GAA. But you go to an All-Ireland final and you see the commercialism that's around that, and try and tell me that one of the shining lights can't do something on the back of that for himself is kind of annoying to me, yeah.
The begrudgery thing is interesting. I wonder if half of the begrudgers actually have an issue with the fact that a fella is standing up and publicly saying, I am good enough to teach you how to do this thing. That Dean Rock is saying, and openly admitting that he realises he is one of the best in the country, the best in the country at what he does. I wonder if people just have this weird issue with that people can actually have the confidence to admit that they are good at something. Because as Irish people, we're supposed to be modest, we're supposed to be refined, we're not supposed to preach about how good we are at all.
Yeah, maybe that's it. And, as I said, look, this kind of notion that Dean Rock has never done anything for anybody in the GAA for free. That was almost kind of what was portrayed. It was almost like, how dare you be, looking for money like this. I know I've done it myself. I know what GAA players are asked to do for charities, for families, for a kid every once in a while, to give them a call or whatever, or call to somebody. And GAA players do it and never make a fuss out of it. And are brilliant to people from their clubs and their localities, and oftentimes when it doesn't suit them, they might have family commitments, they might have something on, and we still manage to try and make it happen somewhere or the other. And it was more the I've my issues with WhatsApp and the stuff that's said in WhatsApp and the stuff that people put up on groups and share on groups. I have a major issue with the way people share the stuff around without thinking at all, really. And that was the first place I saw it. And I had to correct a few WhatsApp groups that I was on and, address those guys first. And then I just started seeing it on Twitter like 2 or 3 days later. And I just said, here, come on, lads, get over it. He's charging. If you want to pay it, you can pay it. As I said earlier on, if my son was at a level where he was, wanting to be, he really wanted this, and I can take him down to the pitch and I can practice with him for hours and hours and hours, but I can be practicing the wrong stuff. And that's what this is about. This is about meeting this guy once or twice, getting everything you can out of him for those 2 sessions, and you don't probably meet him again. You probably recommend him to all your friends that are good free takers and want to learn, but you don't probably go back to him again. You've got everything you need off him in these sessions. And it's then your job to go away and practice. But there's a big difference between practicing something wrong and practicing something when you're doing it right. And I think if you have an hour or two with Dean Rock on the technicalities of it, he's going to teach you how to do it right. And you can then go away and practice that for your 10,000 hours if you want to be a Dean Rock or a Brian Sheehan or a Maurice Fitzgerald or a Shawnee Shea, any of these great kickers. And nothing stopping any of them fellas from doing something similar. And, price points are always a tricky thing when you're starting something. Like, let's call a spade a spade. It's never easy. Even me, it's never easy to set out something at the start or take that leap. And Dean took it, and I just think he was kind of... I just felt there was a lot of shitty stuff going on and there was no need for it. And we quickly forget the great work that these people do in their communities and in their areas. Look... maybe it's something to do with him being on the 5-in-a-row winning Dublin team and, they have enough, that kind of mentality that might be in the rest of the country. Again, that goes back to that word begrudgery of them kind of, being so dominant at the moment and everything seems to go right for them. But I think a guy doing something like that is brave, and he's trying to set out something and do something a bit outside the box. And I think every time somebody sticks their head above I saw it myself with Paul Galvin when he went off doing his fashion thing, and the amount of stick and all bitterness that there was, the people saying stuff to me, really annoyed me that time as well. And I probably didn't have the platform to voice it. And I just felt, I just saw a few things in the space of a few minutes on Twitter about this Dean Rock thing, and I was kind of sick of it, really.
Yeah, I can imagine. Listen, Kieran, we are out of time. We wanted to chat to you a little bit about the NBA because it's back on Thursday, but hopefully we'll get to that another day. Great stuff this morning. Good chatting to you.
All right, thanks a million.
Kieran Donaghy there at 9:39 on this Monday morning. You are watching OTB AM. It's live in association with Gillette. Good mornings start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. We are turning our attention back to the Premier League and specifically on Aston Villa and their great escape yesterday. Delighted to say that Ray Houghton is with us. How are you, Ray?
Yeah, very good, thanks. Yeah, very good indeed.
A great escape indeed for Aston Villa. How unlikely was this, in your view, 4 or 5 weeks back?
Well, four games ago, they looked like they were doomed. But then they got the 2 wins and 2 draws in the last 4 matches, 8 points. It was absolutely massive. And, they had to dig it out yesterday against a West Ham side who've been in very good form. Watford, their results in the last couple of games have been pretty poor. And then you had Bournemouth going to Everton and getting a fantastic win, which put pressure on Villa. But they done enough to get over the line, and I'm sure Dean Smith and all the players and everyone associated with Villa are delighted to be a Premier League club for next season. What's the main reason, in your opinion, that they did turn it around over those last 4 games? Well, I think a little bit of confidence, a little bit of belief. Obviously, the players were getting fitter the more games that they were playing. I think early on, in all the games that I watched, you could tell that the pace of the game was quite slow. But the more they were training, the more games they were playing, they were actually getting better. And I think with Villa, if they defend well, and that's always something that was levelled against them, if they defend well, it gives them a platform to, get some goals, and that's what they've done. If you looked at the results recently, they haven't conceded as many goals as they've done previously, and that was a very important point. And Jack Grealish, we don't know if that's going to be his last game for the club or not, but he's a Villa fan. He's been around the club for a number of years, and he'll be delighted that he's helped to keep them safe. What's your take on that? How likely is it that Jack Grealish is a Villa player come next season? Well, I mean, the point with this is what's your ambition as a player? And it depends who is going to pay the money for him, because I would imagine at the moment with his age and the way that he's really responded to the Premier League, I mean, that was the question mark, wasn't it? How would he do in the Premier League? And he's done exceptionally well. He's been Villa's best player. He's been the player that they've gone to when they've been struggling. He's come up with so many important goals. And it would just be dependent upon who comes in for him. But, yeah, if he wants to go and make a better career for himself, then he might have to move on from Aston Villa. Although Villa have got money. I have heard this. But Aston Villa have got a good owner who's very willing to put money into the club. So it might be dependent on their recruitment policy as well. And if they can bring in the right personnel, it might just tempt them to stay for another year just to see where the club is going. Because if you can get success with your homegrown club and the club that you've supported as a youngster, there's no better joy than that. So it will be dependent on what Dean does as far as bringing in the right personnel. Do you think that perhaps the talk around Jack Grealish joining one of the traditional top 6 clubs has cooled a little bit over the last little while? Obviously, there was controversy surrounding Grealish over lockdown, a couple of antics, breaking lockdown procedures and all that sort of thing. Do you think that cools the jets a little bit if you're Manchester United or Tottenham? No, I don't really, because I think, okay, there was a few transgressions from that point of view, but overall, I think he has grown up a little bit in many respects. That might be against what's happened, when he's coming out as well, doing what he did through lockdown. But as a player, he's grown. On the pitch, he's grown, certainly. He's taken a lot more responsibility. He's doing a lot more in possession of the ball. And I think one of the things is who's got the money. I mean, it's quite easy to say to move on, but I don't know how much, clubs like Chelsea, if they're going to be looking at someone like Jack Grealish, Manchester United. I know Man United have got the money, but the others, I'm not so sure at the moment with the environment we're in. There's a lot of clubs that are struggling because obviously the finances isn't quite there. I'll give you an example. Tottenham normally bring in $5 million every home game. They haven't got that. There's no one coming to the game. So, that's money they haven't got, and they have to be self-sufficient. So I don't know how much money the likes of a Tottenham, for example, will have, or an Arsenal, if they're the sort of clubs that might be looking at Jack Grealish. So we'll have to wait and see, what the priorities are for the clubs and the sort of players that they're looking at.
It's a really good point, and that self-sufficiency is a point I wanted to touch on in the context of Liverpool, Ray, because obviously they got to 99 points, an incredible tally yesterday afternoon, and the possibility of now dominating, of at least starting with back-to-back titles, is going to be one of the big themes in the off-season because of that self-sufficiency, because of the fact that perhaps the transfer market won't explode as it usually did in previous summers. Are Liverpool now really well placed to actually back this up and do back-to-back titles?
Yeah, I think they are well placed, but I think there will be obviously some opposition from the likes of Manchester United, who had a good end to the season. Chelsea, who have already, they've already gone out there, haven't they, with the likes of Ziyech and a couple of others who have got out and bought Werner as well. So I think they have been doing good business behind the scenes, Chelsea. I think they have to look at the defence and goalkeeper, though. I think that is a weakness because the consistency from that area of the field isn't quite there. I think Manchester United will be there or thereabouts. I think they will add as well. I think there's funds there for them to go and spend. Man City, they need to spend. Liverpool, they've actually got some very good youngsters coming through. So they need to go out and spend big on players from outside the club at the moment. Might not be as relevant because they have got the good squad and the strong squad there. And it's amazing, isn't it? We've had Man City 2-3 seasons ago 100 points, Liverpool 99 last season. Man City 98, Liverpool 97. So there is a dominance there, isn't there? And if you look at, I think someone was pointing out to me, Manchester United were near a relegation, but they were 32 points ahead of the likes of Bournemouth, and they were 33 points away from Liverpool. So it's a massive gap, isn't it, when you look at it that way?
It really is. Do you put that down to the fact that the likes of Manchester City and Liverpool are taking the Premier League to a height we've never seen before, or do you think it's to do with the middle third and the bottom third really falling away in recent years?
Well, I think there's a bit of that. I think a bit of both, to be honest. I mean, Liverpool 32 wins this season. They had 30 last season. That's an incredible achievement, isn't it? And Man City, had 2 seasons like that as well, didn't they? Where they had 100 points in the following season. Last season they had 98. So it just shows you that with certain clubs, when they get on a run, they're very difficult to play against, and virtually teams are beaten before they've even kicked a ball. But there's a middle ground at the moment, and I think because of the riches in the Premier League, it's all about survival. As long as you don't finish in 18th, 19th and 20th spot for the likes of teams like Sheffield United, and teams like that, Burnley, West Ham, they're happy enough to survive. I was at Crystal Palace yesterday. They've got no funds there, so it's of paramount importance that they stay in the division to get some money in, maybe just to bring in 1 or 2 new faces. But already which teams are going to struggle for next season and the ones that are going to be competing for the top spots.
For sure. Having now seen Liverpool achieve the 99 points, the second greatest total in the history of the Premier League in a single season, where do they now rank, having seen the 38 games overall, in terms of the great Premier League winners?
Well, they've been first class. The problem they're going to have is because of the pandemic and the fact that the season was so fragmented. It's been going on forever, hasn't it? I was at Crystal Palace yesterday, and we were making the joke about, Liverpool was in the Champions League final 13 months ago. And we're still going in the league. That's how mad this season has been. But it'll be memorable, maybe not for the right reasons, but for the Liverpool supporters who've had to put up with ridicule, if you like, for 30 years, not winning the Premier League and not winning the title in that space of time. They'll just be delighted and happy that they've finally won it. And at the moment, they are current Premier League champions, current European champions, and current World Club champions. That's a remarkable turn of events, if you like, since Jurgen Klopp's come in. The finals he's got them to and the trophies that they've won.
For sure. And I think even the pandemic, Ray, probably makes it an even more memorable season. We're certainly not going to forget the way they've done it in a hurry. Listen, Ray, good chatting to you. Thanks a million for taking the call.
Yeah, thank you.
Ray Houghton there on the line. We'll be talking to another former Aston Villa player in Paul Merson in just a moment here on OTB AM. But just a reminder that if you've missed anything from the show this morning, you can catch the podcast back after 10 o'clock over on the OTB Sports app. You'll get our Gillette Pressure Rankings, football with Daniel Harris and Ray Houghton, GAA with Kieran Donaghy, and the latest sports pages too. You can search for OTB Sports in the App Store and download. As I said, we will be getting Paul Merson on in just a moment. Let's tell you what is on otbsports.com this morning. We have got the OTB AM article, which is live. We've got Brian Kerr on the positions Man United need to address for next season. And Everton's Leighton Baines announces his retirement from football. Roy Keane, then, if you missed this yesterday, he wasn't overly impressed with Aston Villa's survival celebrations, and a lot of pain is a direct quote from Eddie Howe. Emotional Howe reflects on Bournemouth relegation. So that is how things are looking on otbsports.com. Those Roy Keane comments, interesting enough. We'll get Paul Merson's take on that in just a moment. And he is with us now. Paul, how are you getting on?
Yeah, good, thank you. Good, thanks. Good.
Let's start with that. The thing that I've just mentioned there, Roy Keane, not overly impressed with Aston Villa celebrations, but I'm sure you'll forgive them for a pretty big night last night after surviving by the skin of their teeth.
Yeah, I can understand Roy Keane. Obviously, he's a serial winner. He's won everything in the game. He's never really been in that position. But they've underachieved Villa, of course, with the amount of money they spent. But to stay up at the same time, you've got to celebrate that. You've got to. I mean, let's be honest, they're not going to win the Premier League, are they? You know, they're a team that if they stay up, it's a job done, and that's what they've done, and they celebrate that like Liverpool winning the league. It's exactly the same for Aston Villa. You know, they've just come up from another league, from the Championship. You know, spent a lot of money, but didn't spend the money wisely. And, you know, their aim is to stay in the league, and, you know, why not celebrate?
Absolutely. How much, given the fact that you just mentioned there that they've perhaps got financially outmuscled at times over the last little while, how much of this is down to Dean Smith and what he has managed to do in terms of galvanising this group since football has resumed?
Well, I'm a big fan of Dean Smith. I thought he was outstanding at Brentford and Walsall, and I'm a big fan of his. And I think the break sort of helped him a little bit. I think if we didn't have lockdown, I think they would have just fizzled out. They'd just been beaten by Leicester 4-0, ripped apart, and they probably would have just continued and got relegated. But with the break, it helped them, and fair play to put in the performances they did. They rode their luck with the Sheffield United goal. But, you know, the last 4 results are absolutely phenomenal. But it's all about timing. You know, you look at the fixtures and you think, these are hard fixtures. You know, Villa need to get their points early doors. But you go to Everton, who've got nothing to play for, who are struggling. You play Crystal Palace, who are on a bad run, who were safe, had nothing to play for. You play Arsenal, who just had a massive FA Cup semi-final win against Man City that took a lot out of them. And then you look at it and you're thinking, the West Ham game could be a winner-takes-all. And West Ham had done their job, and it was a testimonial football match.
Yeah, it's been an incredible couple of weeks for them, really. How do you see the spending going then this summer? Because Ray Houghton was just saying that perhaps Aston Villa are better set financially than a lot of teams that might have been in a similar situation in the past. It's going to be all about Jack Grealish, no matter or not he stays put. But beyond that, is it a situation where if he goes, they then sign, or they probably need to add assets on top of Jack Grealish were he to stay too?
Yeah, I mean, my first aim would be to sit down and try and get Jack Grealish to stay. I mean, he's a massive Villa fan. I think he ticks the boxes to stay. There's a lot of boxes to be ticked where he's going to play every week, you know, at Aston Villa. You know, it don't matter how bad he plays. At Aston Villa, he'll touch the ball at least 70 to 100 times a game. You know, you go somewhere else, a big club, one, he's not assured of playing every week. It's not like the old days you get bought and you're going to play every week. One, he might not play every week, and two, he'll have to change his game, and he might touch the ball 30, 40, 50 times in a game instead of 100. So he's got to weigh that up. And I was fortunate enough to play at Aston Villa. It's a massive football club. Ray Houghton will tell you the same, but you're not going to win much at Aston Villa. That's the problem. But that's my main aim if I was a Villa if in charge at Villa, is to keep Jack Grealish.
Yeah, it's
and if they don't and they start getting 70, 80 million, don't go and buy 12 players for 5 million quid each. Go and buy a £50 million player if you can. You know, I hate when teams do that. You know, they sell someone for 70-odd million and then they buy 8 players for about 6 million each. I mean, that don't even add up to one player. So for me, if they do sell him, replace him with another superstar or another hero, I'd say.
Paul, we should talk about Arsenal as well and what they might need to do over the next little while. Obviously, this Saturday could be a huge moment in their season as well, even for the mood around the club going into next season. But if you kind of want to read into what happened yesterday, David Luiz has now given away 5 penalties in the Premier League this season, which is the most any player has ever conceded in a single campaign in the competition. Is that immediately where you're looking at, if you were writing the checks at Arsenal Football Club, that a central defender is an unbelievably high priority?
It is. You know, it tells you everything about Arsenal. When you have to play free at the back, that means you haven't got any. Your centre halves are not that good. You know, David Luiz is black or white. There's no grey areas. He's either a 9 out of 10 or he's a 4 out of 10. You know, he's not going to give you a 7 out of 10 for 10 games on the trot. He's just not going to do it. But he might give you 4 games of 8 or 9 on the trot, but then he could easily give you 3 games on the trot of 4 out of 10. I don't think he's the major problem. I think, you know, they need centre-halves. And as I say, when you're playing free at the back, you go through all the teams in the country that play it free at the back. That means they haven't got good enough defenders, or the manager doesn't trust the defenders, and that's why you have to play free at the back. So Arsenal would have to definitely buy a centre-half. You know, they're looking at Stones. You hear they're looking at Stones. I mean, he's another one. You know, on their day, top draw, but got another 5 or 6 or 5 out of 10 in his bag every now and then, which is, you know, when you're playing at top clubs like Man City and Arsenal, you can't afford that.
How do you think Chelsea managed to win the league with 3 at the back a few years ago? Was that probably when the Premier League and its title challenging was at its weakest? Or
I'm not saying you can't win the league. No way. I've never said you can't win the league. You know, Conte is a top manager, a clever manager. He watched Chelsea get ripped to shreds by Arsenal at the Emirates. And he looked at that game and he went, wow, we ain't good enough at the back, so I will have to play free at the back. They played free at the back and they went on and won the league. Now, that's great management. I'm not saying you can't win the league with free at the back. No, of course you can. But good managers like Conte, he see the problem at Chelsea, played free at the back and won the league. And David Luiz was outstanding. And he was outstanding. And he can be on his day. You know, I said Arsenal should sign him up again. You know, because, you know, you don't play for Brazil. You don't win everything in the game if you can't play. Believe me.
How would you rate Mikel Arteta overall as a success story so far at Arsenal? Things there has been an upturn unquestionably over the past few months, but again, it's going to come back to this idea about not only does he have the backing of the board, which he says he does this summer, but actually how much are the board going to put the money where their mouth is? Yeah,
I mean, it's hard to put your money where your mouth is in this day and age, and I say that because Liverpool and Man City are so far ahead. I mean, if Arsenal, if the ball went to Arteta now, he eyes 200 million, that still could not assure you of Champions League football next season. And that's a lot of money, 200 million. And this is the problem we have now. You know, 200 million 4 or 5 years ago, because teams were quite level, there was a lot of level teams, would probably assure you of top 4 football. But it's hard to go and spend 200 million, then all of a sudden Arsenal comes 6th or 7th, which it wouldn't shock you with 200 million. So I like Arteta. I think he's outstanding. I think for the first time over the last month or so, I've watched Arsenal and thought, you know what, I know what they're doing here. I know what they're doing. They've got a plan. They're closing down together. They're playing at a high tempo. And you can see what Arteta's trying to do, and I like that. I like that. But is that going to give you top 4 football next season? It's going to be difficult. You know, Chelsea have bought unbelievably well so far. They probably need another centre-half and a left-back. And then they're massive challengers. I think if Man United could probably go and get Harry Kane, if they went and put the boat out for 120 million or something, I think they become massive players as well. So next season's going to be really, really, really good because you look at it, Man City can't be worse than what they were this season, surely not. And Liverpool are just consistently good. So for me, next season's going to be massive.
Sticking with North London then for next season, would you rather be a Tottenham fan or an Arsenal fan next season?
Poor. That's you're asking someone who played 14 years at Arsenal, who was at Arsenal for 14 years. So that's not a fair question. But if you was asking me as a neutral, I would probably say Tottenham would finish above Arsenal at the moment. I only say that because of the Aubameyang situation. And Mourinho, I still think one of the best managers in the world of football. I just think Tottenham have got to buy into the way he plays. But as I say, you know, in this day and age, Tottenham building a massive stadium, no fans allowed in at the moment. If Man United come in with an outrageous bid for Harry Kane, who's the best forward in the league, I don't see how they keep him. I just don't see how they keep him. So it could all change, you know what I mean? You know, Aubameyang hasn't signed yet. You know, everybody wants centre forwards. You know, and it doesn't matter how players are now, you know, 31, 32. You know, managers are buying players now for now. They're not buying them in 4 or 5 years' time because, let's be honest, these managers are not going to be at that club in 4 or 5 years' time. So they buy for the now, not for the future.
It's very true. Listen, Paul, thanks a million for taking the call this morning. Really appreciate your time.
Pleasure. Anytime, not a problem. Anytime.
Great stuff.
Everybody
Cheers, Paul.
stay well. Stay well. Bye-bye. Bye.
Yeah, you too. Thanks, Paul. Paul Merson there, formerly of Aston Villa and Arsenal, of course. And that is it from OTB AM this morning. Coming up on OTB Sports Radio today from 1 o'clock, we've got OTB Goals, Brian O'Driscoll in conversation with Ian Asewa. At 3 o'clock then, Paul Rouse and a History of Sport, episode 2. Then at 4 o'clock, episode 1 of the OTB Culture Hall of Fame, which is with Andy Lee. At 6 o'clock then, OTB Goals again. And we've got Michael Owen in conversation with Joe on Life After Football. And then as ever, from 7 o'clock tonight on the radio, but also on the OTB Sports app, it is OTB Tonight with News Round, Football Show, and all the other good stuff as well. Plenty of reaction to the final weekend in the Premier League. You'll get all of that good stuff on the OTB Sports app. Search for OTB Sports and download for free right now on the Play Store or on the App Store. We'll see you tomorrow morning on OTB AM. We're live as ever from 7:30. Bye-bye for now.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, we don't just play the game, we change it. Gillette, made of what matters.